All right. Welcome in, everybody. How you doing, Pure? Good to see you. I do not know how I'm gonna deal with this particular stream. It's taken a lot of effort to figure out how I'm gonna get through the material, and I'm just gonna have to try and get through it as quickly as I can. It's gonna be a bit of a long one. We're gonna have to take it step by step. It's gonna suck. What's up, Abe? Good to see you, man. Weekend was rough, but I'm here. Good stuff, Pure. Take it one day at a time. The weekend will pass. You won't remember the weekend. I'm glad you're here. I know it can be a bit tough out there with the new family and everything. 3D Code Warrior, how you doing? So I've got my coffee. I hope y'all had a great weekend. I've got my coffee ready. I am wearing, if you don't know, I have a special thing I do with my hoodies. I have a particular set of hoodies and I switch them depending on the context of the video. Usually for these streams, I wear a different hoodie. I'm not going to say which one because if you know the reference, then you're cool and I don't have to tell you. um, coffee sounds good, yeah. But today I'm wearing my Attack on Titan because this is going to be a very painful slog of a stream. But I think it's actually one of the most fundamental streams. I don't know how this all coalesced. I wasn't actually planning for this. It just kind of happened. But the last week of Daily Tech News seems to have been a coalescing of a bunch of extremely important stuff I've been building up to for the last year and a half. And then I see some information and I'm like, okay, here we go again. What's up, Ghost? Good to see you. So, fortunately or unfortunately, this is another fundamental, like, must watch. Although it's going to be a slog. It's going to be a slog of a stream, but you know how we do it here. We take things one step at a time and we break it down and we go through it and we try to understand it as best we can. I cannot do justice to the content of this stream if I just simply read it out. It would even go against the entire principles of my stream, which is you need to think for yourself. So I'm not just going to give you the information and then just say, well, because I read it somewhere, it's true. You should be questioning me. And so as part of that, I'm going to be questioning myself as we go through the stream, and we're going to go track down the information. And it's going to suck. It's really going to suck. But the title of the stream, yeah, Ghost, the title of the stream, I think is true. So I've tried to come up with a way to get into it, and I'm gonna do like a very quick ramp up. We're gonna tackle two articles that kind of lead up to the main two articles we're gonna go over. Um, I promise you, this is gonna be another one of those streams where you're gonna be like, "What the hell?" I swear, it's gonna be a good one. But you just have to bear through the boring stuff with me. All right. So that said, let me take a sip of coffee and we'll get into it. It's gonna be a thing, man. It's gonna be a thing. I really appreciate everybody who's here. By the way, let me just take a minute while I sip my coffee. Let me take a minute to thank all the supporters over the weekend doing the video game stuff, which doesn't give me much hope for the Daily Tech News stream. I get more support for video game streams than Daily Tech News stream, but you can see my goal up here. I had to increase the goal because I had a couple of very extremely generous people, honestly. And not just them, but people in the past, even just throwing $5 or $10. And I've had to increase the goal because you guys are insanely generous. Like, absolutely, like, it's crazy. And I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate it. It means a lot because it helps me to it helps give me a guide as to whether I'm on the right path or not with what I do with the video game stuff and with these streams. And when you guys support me like that, I can pay bills, I can pay for subscriptions to news articles that help me get this information, and it encourages me to spend the exorbitant amount of time. I don't think you guys realize how much time I've spent on this stream unknowingly, and then having to put it together. I was 5 minutes before I started the stream, I'm still frantically trying to piece together some stuff. And I decided like I just got to start the stream and we'll just swing it. So I just want to do a huge shout out to all the financial supporters. If you do want to financially support me, that's fantastic. You can do so with super chats and subs and all that good stuff. You can type in !tip on the chat. And people who have tipped more or supported more than $10, there's a few of you I have to give access to. You'll get access to enlightenedprogramming.com. All this information is going to be there. I categorize it all, everything. So thank you. I just wanted to do that because that was really important. So now, let's get into this, shall we? What we have is the entire state of the U.S. financial markets held hostage by AI. And I mean that in every sense of the word. That is not an exaggeration. That is not a dramatic statement to pull in viewers or a catchy thing for clickbait. That is true. That is oh so true. And we're going to find out just how true it is today. Because this should concern you greatly as a consumer, as a programmer, as anybody. Anybody should be concerned about this. Okay, so let's start with a couple of things. We're gonna cover this article first. Call center staffers explain to researchers how their AI assistants aren't very helpful. Recent research details how customer service reps at a Chinese utilities call center often struggled when trying to use an AI assistant and were forced to make manual fixes. Researchers affiliated with the Chinese power utility and several Chinese universities recently conducted a study of how customer service representatives at the power utilities call center use AI assistants during their interactions with customers. The study is based on 13 semi-structured interviews with service reps, including team leaders and shift supervisors responsible for handling phone inquiries. Okay, so what did they find? The AI assistant isn't that smart in reality, one survey respondent said. It gives phone numbers in bits and pieces, so I have to manually enter them. Another said the AI had trouble transcribing homophones, words that sound the same but have different spellings or meanings. So in the Chinese language, and there are a few languages across the world that operate this way, the sound of a word can represent a different meaning for that word, depending on context. Or it can even be spelled differently. There's, I'm going to probably botch it, but there's a very famous, I think it's very famous, at least it's famous to me. There's a way to say a particular sound in Chinese where you change the tone a bit and you can say the same sound, and it to Western ears it all sounds the same, but in Chinese you can structure an entire I think it's a poem or a sentence or something like that using just basically the same sound with just adjustments in tone. So there's a very distinct use of tone and context and all of that in the Chinese language. And so obviously AI is going to fail at this because it's not going to be able to discern all of this, right? So the transcription is, it's pretty bad. The AI's emotion recognition system worked poorly. It would misclassify normal speech as negative emotion, had too few categories for classification, and would treat volume level as a sign of poor attitude. As a result, reps mostly ignored the emotional tags created by the AI system and said they had no trouble understanding the caller's tone. The staffers also found that AI output created redundancies or required corrections. While reducing basic typing labor, AI-generated outputs introduced structural inefficiencies in information processing. Because most AI pre-filled content required manual correction or deletion. Text summaries of calls could be useful, but they often require editing or rewording. Transcriptions didn't necessarily include key information. And the learning burdens for the extra adaptation and correction massively outweighed any benefits that people had from these AI systems as part of their call center stuff. Then there's the emotional. And so this is something that people often forget. Um, when somebody calls a call center service person and they make a human centric case for why they need to have a particular type of assistance in something that they're doing, when you talk to another human, they can pick up on that, right? And so they can empathize or even sympathize with your state. An AI system cannot do that. So imagine you're calling a customer service rep. I just want you to picture this because this has happened and I'm trying to track down the story, but I know this has happened. There was a time when someone was, there was a story I remember when someone had been, I believe it was either kidnapped or there was like a robbery going on or something along those lines. They were in extreme danger. And for some reason or another, they couldn't call the police. Instead, they called a customer service line and they pretended to be talking to somebody, um, like a legitimate reason to talk to this customer service person while there was something dangerous going on in the background. And this person managed to get the customer service rep to call 911 on their behalf while pretending to legitimately talk to them. And then the police showed up and, lives were saved. Now imagine that you have to do something like that. You're trying to be clever, you're trying to save lives, and you call up an AI customer service support. Do you think that AI customer service support is going to pick up on the fact that your life is in danger? What is the likelihood of that? Right. And so it's missing that human connection that people sometimes take for granted that exists. And we're going to find out real fast that AI can't do that. And so this Chinese customer support center, it figured this out. They figured it out really fast. They can't discern stress. They don't have a sense. AI doesn't have a sense of stress, structure, etc. Right. So all of these things, as part of this study, clearly show that AI is nowhere near it has nowhere near the amount of capabilities that people claim it has. And this leads into the title. I swear, I'm leading up into the title. Okay. So let's go look at the next article. Now, what are we getting for this kind of output in AI? Major U.S. power operator says AI and data center demands are pushing prices up. So in short, PJM is a power grid operator in the U.S. serving 65 million customers across the District of Columbia and 13 states. And these are the states. By this summer, some parts of PJM's power grid are expected to use so much electricity that people's bills for the summer are projected to be 20% higher than before. The problem? Supply and demand are beyond its control. So there's energy policies caused by the closure of fossil fuel fired power plants before new ones could become operational. And renewable energy. Yeah, that's right. Where is it? Data centers. Here we go. In addition, there's a surge in demand from data centers over the past few years. The region PJM serves has the most number of data centers in the world. Demand for power also exploded in 2023 when ChatGPT started becoming a household name, contributing greatly to the spike in prices. PJM has capped its prices for now and has fast-tracked the connection of 51 power plants to its grid. 51 power plants, but a lot of those aren't slated to come online until 2030. So, for your Studio Ghibli and Bigfoot walking down the park and barely junior level code and AI that can't actually do proper customer service support stuff and insecure code generation output and a better Google search and all of these things that make you feel all nice because you get a little shortcut, a little 20-second shortcut, people are going to have to suffer a 20% price increase in their power energy bills. So I guess what? Just like F them, right? Who cares? Until you realize, by the way, that you're one of those people. So I guess F yourself and F everybody around you. How exactly does that make sense? Yeah, they're also using the drinking water. That's right. We're just talking about power here. We haven't even talked about the drinking water. We haven't talked about how much of this energy is being used just to cool the centers, let alone power them. In general, 40% of this power is used to cool the data centers, let alone keep them running for continual use. Right. So I guess just F everybody, F everything, F yourself. Who cares? Let's just drive prices through the roof, and we'll just destroy the ecosystem along the way. And just who cares? Because you get a better Google search. Because you can write essays faster, right? Who cares? Let's just do it. Let's just do all of it. Next article. Now, this article is starting to lead into the financials. So we already started talking about the financials. We started off with what is AI actually doing? Well, it's not doing very much. We've gone over this many times. Now we're talking about the cost of these things. We've touched on this many times. So now we have the power data center stuff. We've talked about the number of GPUs that have to be created in order to operate AI systems, etc., etc. Okay, now a little bit more into the financial. Microsoft pledges $4 billion for AI education training programs. So there's an entire, I guess, academy. Yeah, here. The company said it will launch Microsoft Elevate Academy to help 20 million people earn AI certificates. So Microsoft is spending a ton of money. I just want you to picture what $4 billion is, and then imagine what that money could be redirected to. And you have to kind of wonder, does Microsoft know how bad AI is? Right? So start asking yourself some questions, right? Just start asking yourself some questions. And this leads nicely into the ending statement right here. Last week, dozens of companies, including Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and OpenAI, signed a White House pledge promising schools funding, technology, and training materials for AI education. So now the question to me is, why are they pushing this so much? Surely, even Apple and Microsoft have pushed out scientific studies showing some of the pitfalls and downfalls of these AI systems. Why on earth would they be spending so much damn money, including encouraging it in educational systems? Something about this just doesn't add up, because there's no way that this guy over here, this high school dropout, is on stream looking at basic information and figuring out that these things are not what they're cracked up to be. And some hotshot, well-educated Yale, Harvard University-backed dude up at Microsoft or Apple or Google doesn't see it and goes, no, everything's fine, actually. That Spiro guy, he's wrong. Everything's like, there's just no way. There's no way. Could I actually be smarter than the people at these companies? Well, we're gonna Detective Conan this. All right. What would actually make sense? Let's assume for a moment that these guys are smart and they know that they're selling you a scam. Why would they be pushing this so much? Well, the obvious answer would be they have to. Right? They know that it's a scam, but they need it to play out. And if that's true, then the question becomes, why do they need it to play out? Yeah, Ghost, you're already on it. Yeah. Why would they need this to play out, right? And so now we get into the nitty gritty. This is the first big article. This is going to take a while, but I promise it'll be worth it. Okay. I need to take a sip of my coffee here, folks. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everybody's doing well. Actually, you know what? Just real quick before I show this article, let's just Okay, here we go. So at the end of this article, right, we talked about dozens of companies, including Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and OpenAI, pledged to pour billions upon billions of dollars into AI certification and education in the educational system. We're going to go over to this website, slickcharts.com, and you're going to see what's called the Magnificent Seven. Let me zoom in. So this is a website that goes over the U.S. stock markets. So we've got the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, and the Dow Jones over here. There's a few other ones that they go over. And there's a group called the Magnificent Seven. All right. And this is going to be critical to a later article we're going to go over. So let's click on Magnificent Seven. And what's this? Does anybody recognize these companies? Who is the Magnificent Seven? We have Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and OpenAI. And then over here, Magnificent Seven, we have Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, and Tesla. So 5 out of the companies listed in here are part of the Magnificent Seven. What is the Magnificent Seven? Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. That's important. But now let's go over to this article. Nvidia is full of shit. And not just regular shit. Now, it's not just like rabbit-sized pellet shit. We're talking like elephant-sized shit, where it's like half a human body. All right? So keep in mind that Nvidia is part of the Magnificent Seven right here, okay? And keep in mind that Nvidia is heavily tied to these companies, including themselves pushing for the certification of these AI systems. And I want you to keep in mind the question of why these companies continue to push billions upon billions of dollars into all of these kinds of things, including making it more accessible to education companies. All right. So this Magnificent Seven, 5 out of the 7 companies are listed here, etc., etc. And let's get into Nvidia is full of elephant shit. All right. Sophie, how you doing? Lappily, how you doing? Good to see you guys. All right, let's read this. And unfortunately, to do it proper justice, we're going to have to read this pretty much in full, and we're going to get through it. BYK, how you doing? Good to see you, man. This is from a website called Sabin's blog. All right. Since the disastrous launch of the RTX 50 series, Nvidia has been unable to escape negative headlines. Scalper bots are snatching GPUs away from consumers before official sales even begin. Power connectors continue to melt. Yes, with no fix in sight. Marketing is becoming increasingly deceptive. GPUs are missing processing units when they leave the factory, and the drivers, for which Nvidia has always been praised, are currently falling apart. And to top it all off, Nvidia is becoming increasingly insistent that media pushes a certain narrative when reporting on their hardware. I just want to point this out. Okay. All right, what's an MSRP? Just like with every other GPU launch in recent memory, this one has also been ripe with scalper bots snatching up stock before any real person could get any for themselves. Retailers have reported that they've received very little stock to begin with. This in turn sparked rumors about Nvidia purposefully keeping stock low to make it look like the cards are in high demand to drive prices. And sure enough, on secondary markets, the cards go way above MSRP. And MSRP stands for manufacturer suggested retail price, by the way. And some retailers have started to bundle the cards with other inventory, PSUs, monitors, keyboards, and mice to inflate the price even further and get rid of stuff in their warehouse people wouldn't buy otherwise. And you don't even get a working computer out of spending over twice as much as a GPU alone would cost you. Have a look at this Newegg. Here is a Newegg RTX 5090 32 gig GDDR7 OC edition PCI Express 5 with DLSS 4 at the cheap chump change pocket change cost of $3,359.99, and I believe this is US. How about this one? The Asus ROG Astral GeForce RTX 5090 032G OC gaming graphic card Sofort Lieferbar. Euros 3,349.95. What's up, Nuke? What's up, D-Daver? Good to see you guys. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Welcome in, everybody. All right. I had a look at GPU prices for previous generation models for both AMD and NVIDIA as recently as May 2025, and I wasn't surprised to find even RTX 40 series are still very much overpriced. With the GeForce RTX 4070 lower mid-tier starting at $800, MSRP $599, whereas the same money can get you a Radeon RX 7900 XT, the second best GPU in AMD's last generation lineup. The discrepancy in bang for buck couldn't be more jarring, and that's before considering that NVIDIA gave out defective chips to board partners that were missing ROPs, raster operations pipelines, from the factory, thus reducing their performance, or how NVIDIA put it in a statement to The Verge. We have identified a rare issue affecting less than 0.5% of GeForce RTX 5090, 5090D, and 5070 Ti GPUs, which have one fewer ROP than specified. The average graphical performance impact is 4%, with no impact on AI and compute workloads. Affected consumers can contact the board manufacturer for a replacement. The production anomaly has been corrected. Those 4% can make an RTX 5070 Ti perform at the levels of an RTX 4070 Ti Super Cyan, completely eradicating the reason you'd get an RTX 5070 Ti in the first place, not to mention that the generational performance uplift over the RTX 40 series was already received quite poorly in general. NVIDIA also had to later amend their statement to The Verge and admit the RTX 5080 was also missing ROPs. It's adding insult to injury with the card's general unobtainium, and it becomes even more ridiculous when you compare NVIDIA to another trillion-dollar company that is also in the business of selling hardware to consumers, Apple. How is it that one can supply customers with enough stock on launch consistently for decades and the other can't? The only reason I can think of is that NVIDIA just doesn't care. They're making the big bucks with data center GPUs now, selling the shovels that drive the AI bullshit gold rush to the point that selling to consumers is increasingly becoming a rounding error on their balance sheets. Could this be true? This article, the author of this article who made this point, couldn't actually be more right. I don't think even they realize how right they are with this statement. And we're going to get into exactly how and how this ties into the entirety of the US stock market being held hostage. Let's continue. These cards are fire and not the good kind. The RTX 50 series are the second generation of NVIDIA cards to use the 12 VHPWR connector. The RTX 40 series became infamous as the GPU series with melting power connectors. So did they fix that? No. The cables can still melt, both on the GPU and the PSU. It's a design flaw in the board of the GPU itself, which cannot be fixed unless the circuitry of the cards is replaced with a new design. Bros, I can't. Wait, it melts. With the RTX 30 cards, each power input, the cables from the power supply, had its own shunt resistor. If one pin in a power input had not been connected properly, another pin would have had to take over in its stead. If both pins were not carrying any current, there would have been no phase to the shunt on the shunt resistor and the card would not have started up. You get a black screen, but the hardware would still be fine. There is a video I do not have permission to play the video. I know I could probably play it and it would be fine, but out of respect for other content creators, I don't like to play their videos unless I have their permission to do so. Other people put work in just like I do, so I'm not going to go over the video. It is on this article. If you want to find the link to it, it's going to be on my enlightenedprogramming.com website, or somebody can grab the link from me, whatever. You can search for it and you can watch the video yourself, all right? NVIDIA, in its infinite wisdom, changed this design starting with the RTX 40 series. Instead of individual shunt resistors for each power input, the shunt resistors are now connected in parallel to all pins of the power input from a single 12 VH power connector. Additionally, the lines are recombined behind the resistors. This mind-boggling design flaw makes it impossible for the card to detect if pins are unevenly loaded, since as much as the card is concerned, everything comes in through the same single line. In other words, their restructure made it so that it was actually a lot harder to determine when you had to evenly distribute the load of power across pins. So the card is actually having a harder time figuring out when it's powered or not powered and whether it should run or not run and blah, 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 blah. Connecting the shunt resistors in parallel also makes them pretty much useless, since if one fails, the other will still have a phase, right? Power input connection, essentially, and the card will happily keep drawing power and not be any the wiser. If the card is supplied with 100 watts on each pin and 5 of the 6 pins don't supply a current, then a single pin has to supply the entire 600 watts the card demands. No wire is designed for this amount of power draw. That would be a miraculous outcome of power wires. As a result, excessive friction occurs from too many electrons traveling through the cable all at once, and it melts. NVIDIA realized that the design around the shunt resistors in the RTX 40 series was kind of stupid, so they revised it by eliminating the redundant shunt resistor, but changing nothing else about the flawed design. You know what I think is happening? I think what's happening is that NVIDIA is vibe coding their own power design. Yeah, they're using AI to ask it, how should we restructure our own power design? That's what's happening. They're using their own cards and they're going like, hey, we have a problem with these pins. AI, can you tell us how to fix it? And AI's like, I got you, bro. Just remove the redundant shunt resistor. It's easy, bro. And so here we go. We have another video. Again, I don't have permission, right? I haven't asked for permission to play it, so I'm not going to play it, but you guys can absolutely go look it up. There's something to be said about the fact NVIDIA introduced the 12VH power connector to the ATX standard to allow for only a single connector to supply their cards with up to 600 watts of power, but making it way less safe to operate at these loads. Worse yet, NVIDIA says the 4 sensing pins on top of the load-bearing 12 pins are supposed to prevent the GPU from pulling too much power. The fact of the matter is, however, that these sensing pins only tell the GPU how much it's allowed to pull when the system turns on, but they do not continuously monitor the power draw after that. That would be the shunt resistor's job, which NVIDIA kept taking out. If I had to guess, NVIDIA must be very confident that the sensing pins are a suitable substitution for those shunt resistors in theory, but practice showed they were not at all accounting for user error. That was their main excuse after it blew up in their face and they investigated. And indeed, if the 12VH power connector isn't properly inserted, pins could not make proper contact, causing the remaining wires to carry more load. This is something that the sensing pins cannot detect, despite their name, and NVIDIA selling it as some sort of safety measure. All right. This is the size comparison, by the way, between the 5090 FE on the right and its predecessor, the 4090 FE on the left. Check that out. It's at least twice the size. At least double. Okay. I mean, we're talking like you've gone from like you've gone from like a C cup to an A cup here. All right. NVIDIA also clearly did not factor in the computer cases on the market that people would pair these cards with. The 4090 was massive. It was a chonker. It was a heckin' chonker. Okay? It was so huge, in fact, that it kicked off the trend of needing support brackets to keep the GPU from sagging and straining the PCI slot. It also had its power connectors sticking out to the side of the card, and computer cases were not providing enough clearance to not bend the plug. as was clarified after the first reports of molten cables. Bending a 12 VH power cable with at least 35 mm or 1.38-inch clearance could loosen the connection with the pins and create the problem of melting cables, something that wasn't a problem with the battle-tested 6 and 8 pin PCIe connectors we've been using up to this point. Board partners like ACES try to work around that design flaw by introducing intermediate shunt resistors for each individual load-bearing pin before the ones according to NVIDIA's designs, but these don't solve the underlying issue that the card won't shut itself down if any of the lines aren't drawing enough or any power. What you get at most is an indicator LED blinking light and some software telling you, hey, everything seems off. Maybe take a look. Just maybe take a look. The fact NVIDIA insists on keeping the 12 VH power connector around and not do jack shit about the design flaws in their cards to prevent it from destroying itself from the slightest misuse would deter you from considering any card from them that uses it. Now, hey Aporia, how are you doing, Aporia, on YouTube? Listen, folks, I'm trying to stay focused on the stream because go watch the Cluely thing, BYK. Go back on my YouTube live. I just posted a Cluely video up there on the not the live, sorry. It's a regular video. You can just search on the YouTube. Go look that up, man. Well, everybody, I see chat popping off. That's fantastic. You guys keep chatting away. Part of what I do on the Daily Tech News stream, so for Aporia as well, is I like focus on the news, right? And then I talk to chat. So I take little breaks like this one. So, hey, Aporia, I'm really glad to have you here, man. I appreciate it. So I'm going to get back to it. I'm going to ignore chat again. All right. So let's keep going. And I promise to everyone who's been watching so far, that this leads into how these companies are keeping the US market hostage and what that means for you. It's like I promise it's going to be worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze. All right. So please stick with me. And on YouTube, you can always go back to the beginning and do a 2x thing. Is there a way I can differentiate your game dev from the Daily Tech News? I title them indie game coding. So if you go back on the live tab, the ones that I do video game streams, it's called indie game coding, and I have episodes for that. Arakar, hey man. I don't know if you're here or leaving, but thanks for being here, or thanks for leaving. I don't know. What happened to your shoulders, bro? Shut up, Arakar. I just saw that. Shut up, Arakar. Why don't you go ask Jim Bob, all right? Okay, focusing up. I'm ignoring chat. Let's keep going. A carefully constructed moat. Over the years, NVIDIA has released a number of proprietary technologies to market that only work on their hardware. DLSS, CUDA, NVENC, and G-Sync, to name a few. The tight coupling with NVIDIA's hardware guarantees compatibility and performance. So this is very true. You can even see this right now. There are certain features with video games that, like when you're playing a game and you want to tweak the graphics setting, DLSS would be one, CUDA would be another, G-Sync definitely another one, but you can only get these if you have an NVIDIA card, right? However, this comes at considerable price these days, as mentioned earlier. If you're thinking about an upgrade, you're either looking at a down payment on a house or an uprooting of your entire hardware and software stack if you switch vendors. If you're a creator, CUDA and NVENC are pretty much indispensable, or editing and exporting videos in Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve will take you a lot longer. Same for live streaming, as using NVENC and OBS offloads video rendering to the GPU for smooth frame rates while streaming high-quality video. Speaking of games, G-Sync and gaming monitors also requires a lock-in with NVIDIA hardware, both on the GPU side and the monitor itself. Yes, by the way, the monitor itself, in order to get G-Sync, actually requires an NVIDIA processing chip inside of the monitor, at least in some monitors. Yeah, there we go. I pre-read. G-Sync monitors have a special chip inside that NVIDIA GPUs can talk to in order to align frame timings. This chip is expensive, and monitor manufacturers have to get certified by NVIDIA. Therefore, monitor manufacturers charge a premium for such monitors. The competing open standard is FreeSync. I'm sure you've heard of this, spearheaded by AMD. Since 2019, NVIDIA also supports FreeSync, but under their G-Sync compatible branding. Personally, I wouldn't bother with G-Sync when a competing open standard exists and differences are negligible. And there's a link. He provides references to all of these things. And so there's another video, and so let's keep going. The PC as a gaming platform has long been held in high regards for its backwards compatibility. With the RTX 50 series, NVIDIA broke that going forward. PhysX, which NVIDIA introduced into their GPU lineup with the acquisition of AGEA in 2008, is a technology that allows a game to calculate game world physics on an NVIDIA GPU. After the launch of the RTX 50 series card, it was revealed that they lack support for the 32-bit variant of the tech. This causes games like Mirror's Edge and Borderlands 2 that still run on today's computers to take ungodly dips into single-digit frame rates because the physics calculations are forcibly performed on the CPU instead of the GPU. Even though the first 64-bit consumer CPUs hit the market as early as 2003, think AMD Opteron and Athlon 64, I remember building these, 32-bit games were still very common around these times, as Microsoft would not release a 64-bit version of Windows to consumers until Vista in 2006. NVIDIA later released the source code for the GPU simulation kernel on GitHub. The pessimist in me thinks they did this because they can't be bothered to maintain this themselves and offload that maintenance burden to the public. DLSS is, and always was, snake oil. Thank you for the sub, iStamy. I appreciate that. Thank you, man. Back in 2018, when the RTX 20 series launched as the first GPUs with hardware-accelerated ray tracing, it sure was impressive and novel to have this tech in consumer graphics cards. However, NVIDIA also introduced upscaling tech alongside it to counterbalance the insane computational expense it produced. From the beginning, the two were closely interlinked. If you wanted ray tracing in Cyberpunk 2077, the only game at the time that really made use of the tech, you also had to enable upscaling if you didn't want your gameplay experience to become a ridiculously pretty PowerPoint slideshow. That upscaling tech is now what we call DLSS, or Deep Learning Super Sampling. It renders a game at a lower resolution internally and then upscales it to the target resolution with specialized accelerator chips on the GPU die. The only issue back then was that because the tech was so new, barely any game made use of it. What always rubbed me the wrong way about how DLSS was marketed is that it wasn't only for less powerful GPUs in NVIDIA's lineup. No, it was marketed for the top of the line, $1,000 plus a pop RTX 20 series flagship models to achieve the graphical fidelity with all the bells and whistles. That to me was a warning sign that maybe, just maybe, ray tracing was introduced prematurely and half-baked. Back then, I theorized that by tightly coupling this sort of upscaling tech to high-end cards and ray-traced graphics, it sets a bad precedent. The kind of graphics NVIDIA was selling us on was beyond the card's actual capabilities. Huh. Hmm. Needing to upscale to keep frame rates smooth already seemed fake to me. If that amount of money for a single PC component still can't produce those graphics without using software trickery to achieve acceptable frame rates, then what am I spending that money on to begin with? Exactly. Fast forward today, nothing's changed. Besides NVIDIA charging double the amount for the flagship RTX 5090. And guess what? Do you think it does Cyberpunk 2077, the flagship ray tracing game with full ray tracing at a playable frame rate in native 4K, only with DLSS enabled? Yes, that's right. There is actually no actual hardware improvement to make DLSS ray tracing run properly on your GPU. No, in fact, it still defaults to your CPU. That's right. And what are you paying for it? Your future children's inheritance money. That's what you're paying for it. From the RTX 4090 website, we've gone over, I believe we went over a similar one where AI was touting its own, 5070 cards. There was an entire video we did on that. We covered it already. And then the 5090 website. Again, I won't show these. I won't play these videos. You guys can go check them out. But this one in particular is part of the AI generated, where it doesn't just upscale on your CPU. apparently, it doesn't just upscale. No. What it does is it uses AI to determine the frames that should exist between frames. So if you're actually running at 30 frames a second, but you want to hit the sweet 60 FPS spot, it'll use AI and DLSS with ray tracing all turned on, all of that stuff turned on, so that it can determine what should exist between frames to give you the feeling of 60 FPS. In other words, they have no idea how to build a proper GPU card anymore. And instead, they're just going to offload all of their GPU card capabilities, their hardware capabilities, to AI. So here we go. 4K native RT overdrive FPS. The MSRP of the 4090, $15.99 for about 20 frames per second. The 5090, oh, a sweet extra 7 frames per second. And what are you paying for? $400 more. All right. So 7 years into ray-traced real-time computer graphics, and we're still nowhere near 4K gaming at 60 FPS, even at $2,000. Sure, you could argue, turn ray tracing off and performance improves, but then why did you spend all that money? Pure generational uplift in performance of the hardware itself is minuscule. They're selling us a solution to a problem they themselves introduced and co-opted every developer to include the tech into their games. Yes, that's right. Now you can kind of see how this ties into the programming stuff we talk about. These kinds of things are now impacting the very way games are made, which includes the code you create to run a game. Based on what? Something that does not work. Now they're doing an even more computationally expensive version of ray tracing, path tracing. So all the generational improvements we could have had are nullified again, and I'm sure that they will increase their prices even more. And even if you didn't spend a lot of money on a GPU, what you get isn't going to be powerful enough to make those ray traced graphics pop and still run well. So most people's experiences with ray tracing is turn it on, see how it looks, realize it eats almost all your FPS, and never turn it on again, thinking ray tracing is a waste. So whatever benefits in realistic lighting was to be achieved is also nullified, because devs will still need to do lighting the old-fashioned way for the people who don't or can't use ray tracing. Making the use of upscaling tech a requirement at every GPU price point for every AAA game to achieve acceptable levels of performance gives the impression that the games were sold at targeting hardware that either don't exist yet or nobody can afford. We need constant band-aids to make it work. Pretty much all upscalers force TAA for anti-aliasing, and it makes the entire image on the screen look blurry as fuck the lower the resolution is. An example: Red Dead Redemption 2, showing TAA in action, your $1,000 at work. Again, I don't want to show this video without permission. Please go look this up. Or if you like Red Dead Redemption 2, go ahead and play this. All right? Frame generation exacerbates this problem further by adding to the ghosting of TAA, because it guesstimates where pixels will probably go in an AI-generated frame in between actually rendered frames, and when it's off, it really looks off. Both in tandem look like someone smeared your screen with Vaseline, and this is what they expect us to pay a premium for the hardware and the games. So now I just want you to take a minute and realize that the reason why games cost so much today is because they're being forced. They're being forced to operate this way. When you create a game, think about it from a programmer's perspective. You don't have to be a programmer, okay? To understand this, it's really, really simple. If you have a piece of hardware that is going to render your game in some kind of capacity, and that capacity comes with a serious design flaw that you can't work around, and you know that this hardware is going to get sold to consumers who may or may not turn this option off, what it means now is that you have to have two divergent paths in your code base. One code base has to account for the fact that some people will not operate the game in this way, and one code path will have to account for the fact that people do turn on these features in their hardware, which means now that the effort level is at maybe not doubled, but it's definitely increased. Guess what? More time, more money. Guess who pays for that? You do, which means you're getting screwed up two different holes in your body. Raw dog, no lube. You're getting screwed in the hardware end because the hardware vendor, in this case Nvidia, is saying pay us more money for effectively nothing. And then you're getting screwed again when you go and buy all of the games in your library suite, where you have to pay for the developers who have to account for this thing that ultimately, what does it do? Nothing. Most of you out here right now, I can see kind of a little bit in chat, are like, I hate TAA, I hate DLSS, I turn that shit off anyways. So what are you paying for? You're paying twice for nothing. Combine that with GPU prices being absolutely ridiculous in recent years, and it all takes the form of a scam, because that's what it is. That's what it is. It's a scam. As useful or impressive a technology as DLSS might be, game studios relying as heavily on it as they do, it's turning out to be detrimental to the visual quality of their games and incentivizes aiming for a level of graphical fidelity and complexity with diminishing returns. Games from 2025 don't look that dramatically different or better than games 10 years prior, yet they run way worse despite more modern and powerful hardware. Games these days demand such a high amount of compute that the use of upscaling tech like DLSS is becoming mandatory. The most egregious example of this being Monster Hunter Wilds, which states in its system requirements that it needs frame generation to run at acceptable levels. Have a look. Recommended specs, 60 FPS with frame generation enabled. So now we're getting into necessity. It is now being forced upon you. Meanwhile, Jensen Huang came up on stage during the keynote for the RTX 50 series cards and proudly proclaimed, RTX 5070 4090 performance at $549? Impossible. Impossible without artificial intelligence. What he meant by that, as it turns out, is the RTX 5070 only getting there with every trick DLSS has to offer, including new DLSS 4 multi-frame generation, only available on RTX 50 cards at the lowest quality setting, and all DLSS trickery turned up to the max. It's basically just bullshittery at its finest. You cannot tell me this is anywhere near acceptable levels of image quality for thousands of bucks. Again, go have a look at this. I believe I referenced this article when I went over the AI frame generated stuff from the announcement that NVIDIA did. I referenced it, but I didn't show it. Again, you're welcome to go look at it. This is absolutely banger. It was a very good one. Not only does that entail rendering games at a lower internal resolution, you also have to tell your GPU to pull 3 additional made-up frames out of its ass so NVIDIA can waltz around claiming runs insanely demanding came here at 5,000 FPS for the higher number equals better masturbator crowd. All the while, the image gets smeared to shit because NVIDIA just reinvented the motion smoothing option from your TV settings menu, but badly, and also it's AI now. Else, what would all these tensor cores be doing than waste space on the GPU die that could have gone to actual render units? Now, this leads directly into the next article that we're going to read, because this one's coming to a close, so I just want you to consider this. If it is true that NVIDIA does not give a shit about consumer-based hardware usage like video games now, then could it be possible that they actually give a shit about the AI stuff? And if that's true, wouldn't it make sense that they would reduce their production factor by focusing on all the AI stuff first and then making the video game stuff fit the mold, so to speak? That was a pun. It was intended. Yes, of course. And so how would they do that? They would first focus on the biggest moneymaker, which is just pure AI and data centers and all of that, ChatGPT and all of that. And then they would fit everything else around that, because video gamers don't make them billions upon billions upon billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. No, it's nowhere near as close as when you look at the AI costs that the Magnificent Seven are spreading across each other's backs, which we're going to get into. So now we start to get a sense of why this would be happening, why NVIDIA would be doing this. NVIDIA likes you to believe DLSS can create FPS out of thin air, and they're trying to prove it with dubious statistics, only disclosing in barely readable fine print that it's a deliberate chosen very small sample size, so the numbers look very impressive. If I go and pop this open, this is an article from PC Gamer, and they go over these statistics of how they actually got their impressive stats. Okay, so you can look this up. I don't think we need to. I think it's pretty obvious. If you're a gamer and you use any of this, it's really easy to tell. The resolution is fake. The frames are fake. So is the marketed performance. Never mind that frame generation introduces input lag that NVIDIA needs to counterbalance with their reflex technology. Input lag that NVIDIA needs to counterbalance with reflex tech. Lest what you see on your screen isn't actually where you think it is, because again, it's AI frame generation. That didn't originate from the game logic. It originated from a completely separate thing. It's a completely separate part of the GPU. There is no game logic that includes it. It's just trying to discern what it should be next. That's it. That's all it is. They create problems for themselves that they then create solutions for in an endless cycle of trying to keep up the smoke screen that these cards do more than they're actually equipped to do. So a 20% premium for a 10% uplift in performance has the faintest resemblance of justification. I was afraid DLSS would get used to fake improvements where there are barely any back then, and I feel nothing if not vindicated for how NVIDIA is playing it up while jacking up prices further and further with each generation. None of that is raw performance of their cards. This is downright deceitful bullshit. The intimidations will continue until morale improves. It gets worse. It gets worse. NVIDIA lying on their own presentations about the real performance of their cards is one thing. It's another thing entirely when they start bribing and threatening reviewers to steer the editorial content in NVIDIA's favor. In December 2020, hardware review channel Hardware Unboxed received an email from NVIDIA senior PR manager Brian Del Rizzo after they reviewed NVIDIA cards on pure rasterization performance without DLSS or ray tracing, saying that performance did not live up to their expectations. Here is the email. Hi, Steve. We have reached a critical junction in the adoption of ray tracing, and it has gained industry-wide support from top titles, developers, game engines, APIs, consoles, and GPUs. As you know, NVIDIA is all in for ray tracing. RT is important and core to the future of gaming, but it's only one part of our focused R&D efforts on revolutionizing video games and creating a better experience for gamers. This philosophy is also reflected in developing technologies such as DLSS, Reflex, and Broadcast that offer immense value to consumers who are purchasing a GPU. They don't get free GPUs, they work hard for their money, and they get to keep their GPUs for multiple years. Despite all this progress, your GPU reviews and recommendations continue to focus singularly on rasterization performance, and you have largely discounted all of the other technologies we offer to gamers. How dare you, sir? It is very clear from your community commentary that you do not see things the same way that we, gamers, and the rest of the industry do. You evil, evil man who wants to have performant GPUs in video games. How dare you call us out for not creating better GPUs? Our Founders Editions boards and other NVIDIA products are being allocated to media outlets that recognize the changing landscape of gaming and the features that are important to gamers and anyone buying a GPU today, be it for gaming, content creation, or studio and streaming. And other words, how dare you spit on our work? We worked hard to give you nothing for more money. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to put our money into people who like what we do. Okay? Because our fifis are hurt. Okay, I'm going to go back to my mama. Okay, I'm going to go talk to my mama. My mama's not happy with you. Okay, I'm going to take my money. I'm going to do a different sandbox. Shut the hell up. Hardware Unboxed should continue to work with our add-in card partners to secure GPUs to review. Of course, you will still have access to obtain pre-release drivers and press materials. That won't change. We are opening to revisiting this in the future should your editorial change. Hardware Unboxed was thus banned from receiving review samples of NVIDIA's Founder Edition cards. It didn't take long for NVIDIA to backpedal after the heavily publicized outcry blew up in their face, which makes it all the more surprising that a couple years later, they're trying to pull this again with Gamer Nexus. Here's another video. As Steve Burke explains in the video, NVIDIA approached him from the angle that in order to still be given access to NVIDIA engineers for interviews and specials for their channel, Gamer Nexus needs to include multi-frame generation metrics into their benchmark charts during reviews. Let me tell you something. This is very much a "but my feelings though" thing, because when I talk to people about why you shouldn't use React, So there are some people who, in a debate, in an argument against me, will literally go, "Oh, but look at how many React developers really, really care about the React work that they do." Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't give one single fuck. Not one. Not one fuck given to those front-end developers who continue shoving React bullshit down my throat, making websites worse, and essentially just cancerizing, metastasis, I don't know, whatever the hell that word is, that medical word, the entire industry. I don't care how hard you worked to just shitify the entire front end of web. I don't give one shit. Not even a fuck. Not one fuck. Not one shit. NVIDIA is operating this exact same way. We're going to take all our money and we're going to go home. We're going to take our soccer ball and go play with people who actually like what we do. You don't do anything and you charge everybody more, way more. Why should I care? Steve rightfully claims that this tactic of intimidating media by taking away access until they review NVIDIA cards in a way that agrees with the narrative NVIDIA wants to uphold tarnishes the legitimacy of every review of every NVIDIA card ever made, past and present. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, this is the React argument. Oh, but React has been around for a long time. Are you going to, you want to go back to assembly, bro? Bro, shut the fuck up. Seriously. It creates an environment of distrust that is not at all conductive when you're trying to be a tech reviewer right now. This also coincided with the launch of the RTX 5060, a supposedly more budget-friendly offering. Interestingly, NVIDIA did not provide reviewers with the necessary drivers to test the GPU prior to launch. Instead, the card and the drivers launched at the same time. All of those reviewers were off at Computex, a computer expo in Taipei, Taiwan. The only outlets that did get to talk about the card prior to release were cherry-picked by NVIDIA. And even then, it was merely previews of details NVIDIA allowed them to talk about, not independent reviews. Because if they would have been properly reviewed, they'd all come to the same conclusion. 8 gig of VRAM would make this $299 budget card age very poorly because that is not enough VRAM to last long in today's gaming landscape. But it probably doesn't matter because NVIDIA is so busy tarnishing the reputation of their drivers, releasing hotfix after hotfix. What is this article? From The Verge, NVIDIA GPU drivers are a mess. A series of new drivers and hotfixes keep introducing issues for NVIDIA GPU owners. When was this from? April 22nd, 2025. It only just continues. Yeah, shut up, Verge. I don't want a subscription, all right? I might use some of the generous money you guys have tipped, which I really appreciate, by the way, to pay a subscription to one of these, but it's got to be worth it. The Verge ain't worth it, bro. In an attempt to stop their cards, old and new, from crashing seemingly randomly when encountering certain combinations of games, DLSS, and multi-frame generation settings, users of older generation NVIDIA cards can simply roll back to a previous version of the driver to alleviate these issues, but RTX 50 series owners? Nope. Because older drivers don't make their shiny new cards go. NVIDIA won. We all lost. And so now this coalesces right back into how the entire tech industry operates. React, Rust, Vite, Next, Vue, NPM, Node, microservices, Agile, I don't know. There's so many different things that are it's all bullshit. All of it. Tech wins. The quick VC exit. Make programmers, developers, and now hardware manufacturers. And I warned you, if you watched my streams 1.5 years ago, I motherfucking warned you that this shit, this kind of thinking, this brain rot thinking was going to infect hardwares. I did say that. I know I said that. I'll go back and dig it up if I fucking have to, okay? I told you it was going to infect hardware, and it is. It is right now. This is how the tech industry operates. And AI is the ultimate culmination of all the stupid tech industry decisions in the past 10 to 20 years, all put in this nice little black box called AI so that we can generate more of it in mass. Okay? Let's keep reading. With over 90% of the PC market running on NVIDIA tech, they're the clear winner of the GPU race. The losers? All of us. Ever since NVIDIA realized there is tons of more money to be made on everything that is not part of putting moving pixels on a screen, they've taken that opportunity head on. When the gold rush for crypto mining started, they were among the first to sell heavily price-inflated GPU-shaped novels to anybody with more money than brains. Do you guys remember that? Do you guys remember the crypto rush? There was a GPU shortage during the crypto rush. You guys remember with Bitcoin and all that? People were buying up. I remember articles that I was reading at the time when they were saying like we might run out of GPUs. Like people might not be able to get their hands on it for a long time. This could completely flatline us. Same now with the AI gold rush. PC gamers were hung out to dry. NVIDIA knows we're stuck with them, and it's infuriating. They keep pulling their shenanigans, and they will keep doing it until someone cuts them down a couple of notches, but the only ones who could step up to the task won't do it. Why won't they do it? Oh, we're getting into it, boys. We're getting into it. We're getting into it. AMD didn't even attempt at facing NVIDIA at the high-end segment of this generation, instead trying to compete on merely the value propositions for the mid-range. Intel is seemingly still on the fence if they really want to sell dedicated GPUs while shuffling their C-suite and generally being in disarray. Both of them could be compelling options when you're on a budget, if it just wasn't for the fact that NVIDIA has a long-standing habit of producing proprietary tech that only runs well on their hardware. Now, they've poisoned the well with convincing everybody that ray tracing is something every game needs, and games that incorporate it do so on an NVIDIA tech stack, which runs like shit on anything that is not NVIDIA. That is not a level playing field. When the way it's meant to be played slowly turns into the only way it doesn't run like ass, it creates a moat around NVIDIA that's obviously hard to compete with. Thank you for the follow just now. And gamers aren't concerned about this because at the end of the day, all they care about is the game that runs well and looks pretty. But I want you to consider this. The games imbued with such tech creates a vendor lock-in effect. It gives NVIDIA considerable leverage in terms of how games are made, which GPUs you consider buying to run these games, and how well they will eventually actually run in your system. So it's a feedback effect, right? And NVIDIA creates the hardware that makes you lock into hardware, which makes games lock into hardware, which makes you buy the hardware, which then gives NVIDIA more power to create more hardware lock-in, and the cycle continues forever and ever. Just like tech, when you buy into Agile, you're stuck in Agile. When you buy into AI, you're stuck in AI. All of it. It's all the same bullshit. It's all just packaged in different forms. If all games that include NVIDIA's tech are made in a way that make it so you have to reach for more expensive models, you can be sure that's a soft power move NVIDIA is going to pull. And I'm going to do you one better. How about programmers who need to depend on AI to solve problems in their code and then have to pay for the tokens? Do you think maybe that's a little bit of a lock-in? As we established, it looks like they're already doing that. Tests show that the lower-end graphics cards cannot and probably were never intended to perform well enough, even with DLSS, because in order to get anything out of DLSS, you need more VRAM, which means the lower-end cards don't have enough VRAM, so how are you going to get anything out of DLSS? So they're upselling you on more expensive models. They're like, hey, you want DLSS? You can't really pay for the lower-end cards, can you? Because otherwise you don't get the benefit. And there are some games that you're not going to be able to play if you purchase the lower-end cards. So you kind of have to pony up. All right. So they cut corners in ways that make it a no-brainer for you to spend more expensively. Then they use their dominance in the market to control the media, to make sure you keep giving them money and you keep or at the very least misinformed. And when you don't have to compete and don't have any improvements to sell either, in incentivized actual R&D, you do what every monopolist does and write out your consumer base until you've bled them dry. A few years back, I would have argued that that's their prerogative if they provide the better technical solutions to problems in graphics development. Today, I believe that they are marauding monopolists. They are too high, on their own supply, and they're ruining it for everybody. If NVIDIA had real generational improvements to sell, they wouldn't do it by selling us outright lies. And I hate they're getting away with it time and time again for over 7 years. Okay. Chat, how are we liking this so far, chat? Are you guys ready? You guys ready? You guys ready for the deep dive? We haven't even begun. Bros, this stream hasn't even started. That was a really good one. It was a spicy one. And now it's gonna be a long one, boys. It's gonna be a long one. So what we have here, what we have here is a company that operates in a very powerful way. And so this is what I want to hone in on now. Thanks everybody again. I'll take a little break. I need to take a sip. 60 hertz push, yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not reading a lot of chat. You guys are going insane over there. I love it. Keep going, keep chatting. Um just while I take a little break. I'm going after the big 7. That's right, Pierre. I'm going after the big 7 and I'm going after him right now. Right now. So see, here's what I want you guys to focus on. I'm using this as an excuse to kind of soften up my my voice here. It's a lot. How did Nvidia get so powerful? Right? How did Nvidia get so powerful? How did Nvidia become such a powerhouse, such that they could send threatening emails to media coverage who are reviewing Nvidia's hardware, and they could effectively try and Armstrong them? Now, you can make a case that they didn't actually succeed in doing that. You know what? That's fair. Maybe they didn't succeed in strong arming these media outlets. That's completely fair. However, I do have to ask, where on earth did they get the massive balls to even attempt to do this? What gave them the massive balls to even attempt to operate in this way? So, I'm sorry, folks. I gotta my throat. That was a long read. I got through that really well, but my throat is telling me I'm paying a price. I let me just. I don't think you guys need to hear me. You know, give me a second. Give me a second. All right. I think I'm ready. I just don't want to be government support. Okay. You got a Turk stuck in my throat. Shut the hell up, BYK. Okay, are we all ready? We all took a break. Yeah, I see chat slowing down. You guys are losing steam. Yeah, are we ready to pick it up again? Because we're about to go into a mind fuck. Are we ready to get into the mind fuck? I'm about to mind fuck all of you. Here, I need the Joker. I need the Joker thing from Batman. Here we go. All right. Magnificent Seven. Let's have a look at what the Magnificent Seven is. The Magnificent Seven is the 7 companies in the US stock market that makes up a huge portion of the US stock market. Guess who has the highest weight? And so our story continues here. Okay, Arakar. Okay, fair enough. There's a little bit of a delay, so he might have. Arakar, if you want to ask questions, go for it. I'll give Arakar a second because I realize there's a delay, and he might have actually wanted to ask questions during the break, and there's a delay. So just to be fair, Arakar, go ahead, ask your questions. In what coding language do your game dev streams, and which engine? I use C. I don't use any game engine. Stop using game engine. Stop using third-party libraries. Stop using things like React. Stop using abstractions. Stop using obfuscation. Stop using paradigms. Stop it. I use vanilla C, no standard library. I compile to WebAssembly. I then run it on the browser so my C code is a single header. You know what? For fuck's sake. Let me just show you right now. I haven't played I played a little bit of The Witcher 3. I just couldn't get into it. It was just personally not my favorite kind of game. I can see why people like it. It's just not my kind of thing. Okay, so here we go. This is Vanilla C. It's all one file, a single header file library. I compile it with Clang to WebAssembly 32. Then let me pop open the actual game. In the game here, I render it using just div elements. Where the heck is it? It's just div elements, vanilla HTML, vanilla CSS, vanilla JavaScript, no third-party libraries. I hand roll all my code, no AI, no syntax highlighting, no autocompletes, nothing, literally nothing. Everything I do is hand-coded using the most simple abstractions and paradigms, not even the most simple paradigms you can possibly think of. This game is rendered every frame. All the HTML is re-rendered every frame. It's an immediate mode GUI. I will show you right now. If I go open up the viewport wrapper and we go here and we'll go, actually I have to pause it, otherwise the re-render breaks it. So here we go. All of this is just all individual div elements. I have one big asset file. I slice them up and position them. Everything is vanilla. Absolutely everything is vanilla. The WebAssembly acts as a game state manager, numbers in, numbers out. I don't use scripting. I don't use any JavaScript glue, nothing like that. It's just straight up calls into the WebAssembly memory to get the state of the game. I then render it in here. And by the way, one of my most favorite things to show, CSS 3D. Yes, that's right. Vanilla CSS 3D. Vanilla CSS 3D. Here we go. Let's see if it'll work if I do a sail. Let's set sail. And here we go. And there's CSS 3D here. Okay. All vanilla. Stop using that shit. Stop using all the stupid obfuscation crap. Just stop it. You don't need it. And you know why you don't need it? Do you know why you don't need it? Because NVIDIA is full of shit. And the entire tech industry is full of shit. The entire tech industry wants you as a programmer to believe that you're too stupid to solve problems on your own. Why would you go solve a problem when you can just npm install it, when you can go pull a library off the shelf, when you can use AI, etc.? You're too stupid. Someone smarter than you has figured it out. So use the thing. Just lean on the thing, which has then led to the neutering of programmers so that they don't understand what fundamental principles of programming. Okay? All right. Back to the article. Back to the story. Back to the entire stream. So we have this article, and then we have the Magnificent Seven. So what is weight? Stock exchange weight meaning. Let's just try and do that. Okay. So weighted. This is from Investopedia, what it means. So if my understanding is correct, I'll paraphrase for you right now. Weight means the representation of its value in relation to the stock market that it's inside of. Weighted is a description of adjustments to a figure to reflect different proportions or weights of components that make up a figure. There you go. So there is price-weighted averages that compares each security based on the stock price relative to the sum of all the stock's prices. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ are based on market cap, where each company is measured relative to its market value. So there is a little bit of a nuance depending on which market you're seeing, but essentially what it's trying to do is represent how much does this represent either the stock market of like the sector, or in some cases itself, or even just the stock market as a whole. So in the case of these weights, when you have a look at their total overall, not the individual ones summed up, but the total overall, and you do like some kind of mathematical average mean thing, you take the Magnificent Seven, and the reason why they're called the Magnificent Seven is because they represent a huge chunk of the U.S. stock market. Now, I have the article that we're going to read from Edward Zitron. We have read one of his articles before, and this one is even better than the last one we read. Let's get into it, shall we? BYK, I talked about how I compile my code, BYK. I'm trying to stay focused, but I've talked about how to compile it. I just use Clang, man. You can go back on yesterday's episode. I think you might have been there, and you'll see it too. All right. Let's read this properly. Good journalism is making sure that history is actively captured and appropriately described and assessed, and it's accurate to describe things as they are currently as they currently are as alarming. I read that really, really poorly. I apologize. Okay, so this person is alarmed at the state of the market, right? Alarm is not a state of weakness or belligerence or myopia. My concern does not dull my vision, even though it's convenient to frame it as somehow alarmist, like I have some hidden agenda or bias toward doom. I profoundly dislike the financial waste, the environmental destruction, and fundamentally, I dislike the attempt to gaslight people into swearing fealty to a sickly and failed pseudo-industry where everybody but NVIDIA and consultancies lose money. I also dislike the fact that I, and others like me, are held to a remarkably different standard to those who paint themselves as optimists, which typically means people that agree with what the market wishes were true. Critics are continually badgered, prodded, poked, mocked, and jeered at for not automatically aligning with the idea that generative AI will be this massive industry, constantly having to prove themselves, as if somehow there's something malevolent or craven about criticism, that critics do this for clicks or to be a contrarian. I don't do anything for clicks. I don't have any stocks or short positions. My agenda is simple. I like writing. It comes to me naturally. I have a podcast. Go check it out. This guy's really good. And it is on some level my job to try and understand what the tech industry is doing on a day-to-day basis. He's very much like me. All right, so I can appreciate this. I'm not bought by anybody. I don't have any sponsors. I don't have any holdings. I don't even have any investments. I don't have enough money for investments. So I can just speak freely, which means I get to make fun of the Magnificent Seven. I get to make fun of dumbass programmers, managers, and executives who are ruining the tech industry. And I don't have to worry because nobody holds anything over my head. I've been railing against bullshit bubbles since 2021. Anti-remote work push, same here. Clubhouse and audio social networks bubble, I don't even know what that is. The NFT bubble, the made up quiet quitting panic, and I even, though not as clearly as I wished, called something that was up with FTX several months before it imploded. This isn't contrarianism. It's the kind of skepticism of power and capital that's necessary to meet these moments, and if it's necessary to dismiss my work because it makes you feel icky inside, get a therapist or see a priest. Nevertheless, I am alarmed, and while I have said some of these things separately based on recent developments, I think it's necessary to say why. In short, I believe the AI bubble is deeply unstable, built on vibes and blind faith, and when I say the AI bubble, I mean the entirety of the AI trade, and it's so simple. So then he goes on to describe how bad this can be, etc., etc. Okay. The Magnificent Seven's weak point, NVIDIA. So we are going to tie this in. All the daily tech news streams that I've covered are going to complement. I want you to think back on all the daily tech news streams you've seen, and I want you to see how all of the scientific studies, the surveys, kind of like the first article we went over here, where call center staffers in China are saying AI assistants suck ass. Okay, and so we pull all that in, all the science, all the surveys, all the data, and we prove the individual points one step at a time, one step at a time. It's a slow process. And over time, we come to an article like this, and now it starts to complement the findings of this article, right? So we get a far more complete picture. And we talk about things like technocracy. So if you watch the banger technocracy episodes, those were fantastic. They all tie into this, all right? So now start pulling in all of it together. Okay. As I write this, NVIDIA is currently sitting at $170 a share, a dramatic reversal of fate after the pummeling it took from the DeepSeek situation in January, which sent it tumbling to a brief late April trip below $100 before things turned around. Okay, so if we go look at NVIDIA here. All right, so here we are. And you can see the pricing on the different indexes. So $170 is approximately correct here, right? I keep going to the wrong article. The Magnificent Seven stocks, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Alphabet, which is Google, Apple, Meta, Tesla, and Amazon, make up around 35% of the value of the US stock market. And of that, NVIDIA's market value makes up about 19% of the Magnificent Seven. So now let's go back to the weighted meaning, right? And so when you look at what weighted means, it has a contextual, it's contextual, right? So if you have a look at what let's go back. The weight of the Magnificent Seven, what this is essentially trying to show you is how much weight of the Magnificent Seven do these individual entities hold. So NVIDIA is 22% of all the Magnificent Seven. And Magnificent Seven makes up a total of 35% of the entire stock market. That's why they're called the Magnificent Seven. So NVIDIA is essentially holding the entire stock market hostage. This dominance is also why ordinary people ought to be deeply concerned about the AI bubble. The Magnificent Seven is also most certainly a big part of their retirement plans, even if they're not directly invested. Back in May, Yahoo's Finance's Laura Bratton reported that Microsoft, 18.9%, Amazon, 7.5%, Meta, 9.3%, Alphabet, 5.6%, and Tesla, 0.9% alone make up 42.4% of NVIDIA's revenue. Let's go back to this. Let's click Magnificent Seven, and we can see how this plays out, right? So you can see that the weight that they hold, right? When you take the lower end of these and you look at how much they're spending on NVIDIA, and let's open up this report from Finance Yahoo. This report goes in depth into the financial contributions that these other companies are making into NVIDIA. So not only is NVIDIA holding a vast majority of the weight of the 35% of the US stock market, but the companies that are in the Magnificent Seven are funding this beast directly. Is this starting to make a lot more sense now? Is this starting to make a lot more sense now? Microsoft pledges $4 billion for AI education training programs. Is this starting to make a lot more sense now? Are we starting to get a sense of what's going on here? Those who have ears, listen. The breakdown makes things worse. Meta spends 25% and Microsoft an alarming 47% of its capital expenditures on NVIDIA chips. And as Bratton notes, Microsoft also spends money renting servers from CoreWeave, which analyst Gil Luria of D.A. Davidson estimates accounted for $8 billion, more than 6% of NVIDIA's revenue in 2024. Luria also estimates that neocloud companies like CoreWeave and Crusoe that exist only to prove AI compute services account for as much as 10% of NVIDIA's revenue. So in order to have these companies that exist to serve AI, they also have to purchase AI. Therefore, they go into a purchasing agreement, which is, let's buy NVIDIA stuff to host so people can use AI. Does that make sense? NVIDIA's climbing stock value comes from its combined revenue growth. In the last 4 quarters, NVIDIA has seen year-over-year growth of 101%, 94%, 78%, and 69%. And in the last quarter, a little statistic was carefully brushed under the rug that NVIDIA missed, though narrowly, on data center revenue. And we can open up this report. I did read this report as well. I tried to read, I am not joking, I went and read all of these as much as I could anyways. There were some that I couldn't read. They were too dense. But you can see this is the NVIDIA quarterly report, and they do talk about missing their quarter one goals for 2025. And they claim there are a few factors for this, including some of the constraints around the Trump administration putting constraints on hardware or something like that. It's some kind of H2O ban or something like that, which I think this article talks about. This is exactly what it sounds like. GPUs that are used in servers rather than gaming consoles and PCs. Now can we see how this tied into this article? Where NVIDIA is primarily focused on funding their server-based Geppetto server infrastructure instead of gamers, and then they fit the gaming stuff to match? Can we start to see the connection there? Those who have ears, listen. Analysts estimated that NVIDIA would make $39.4 billion from this category, and NVIDIA only brought in $39.1 billion. Then again, it could be attributed to its problems in China, especially as the H2O ban has only just been lifted. I believe it's H2O. Maybe it's H20. I don't know. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know, okay? I should have looked at this. I'm not a professional new journalist, all right? NVIDIA's quarter-over-quarter growth has also become aggressively normal. from 69% to 59% to 12% to 12% again each quarter, which again isn't bad. It's actually pretty good. But when 88% of your revenue is based on one particular line in your earnings, it's a pretty big concern. So again, I want you to consider this. One line of production for NVIDIA serves as a vast portion of 35% of the US stock market. One product line. One. Just one. NVIDIA relies not only on selling lots of GPUs each quarter, but it must always sell more GPUs the next quarter. Do you understand the incentive that this generates? 42% of NVIDIA's revenue comes from Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, and Tesla, continuing to buy more GPUs. NVIDIA's value and continued growth is heavily reliant on hyperscaler purchases and continued interest in generative AI. The U.S. stock market's continued health relies on some level on 5 or 6 companies. It's unclear how much Apple buys GPU-wise, spending billions of dollars on GPUs from NVIDIA. An analysis from portfolio manager Danke Wong from January found that the Magnificent Seven stocks accounted for 47.87% of the Russell 1000 index's returns in 2024, an index fund of the 1,000 highest ranked stocks on FTSE Russell's index. I believe, if my understanding is correct, I am a high school dropout. I believe an index fund is essentially something that you would trust a company to use an index fund to invest in a few different places in the stock market to get a return. I believe, don't quote me on that. You're welcome to look up the definition. In fact, don't take my word for it. I'm an idiot. You shouldn't trust me. The entire premise of this stream is go use your brain. Don't trust me, right? In simpler terms, 35% of the US stock market is held up by 5 or 6 companies buying GPUs. If NVIDIA's growth story stumbles, it will reverberate through the rest of the Magnificent Seven, making them rely on their own AI trade stories. And guess what? They don't have an AI trade stories. In other words, what this means is that if NVIDIA goes the way of the dodo bird, hey, let's go with it, dodo bird, I like it. Anyways, if NVIDIA goes the way of the dodo bird, then the other magnificent companies now have to rely on their own AI, let's say, investments between each other. Do they have them? Which means that the entirety of the US stock market, it means 35% of the US stock market is propped up by this. Now, I want you to consider something. Let's take a pause on this, okay? And let's go back up to, I wonder if it's up here. Yes, the DeepSeek situation. I want you to consider if you're an external nation state, and it is really, really easy. This high school dropout, room temperature IQ, self-taught guy is sitting on some stupid stream, talking to people, ranting and raving to the clouds, figuring out, along with this article, that all of this stuff is all just magic bullshittery. Now imagine you're an external nation state actor and you know, because it's very easy to figure out, that 35% of the US stock market is dependent on one company and one product line. What might you do? Could that be an attack vector? Let's see. Deep Impact from the same author, but we don't even have to read this article because we've gone over what DeepSeek did. A Chinese artificial intelligence company that few have heard of called DeepSeek came up with multiple models that aren't merely competitive with OpenAI, but they undercut them in several meaningful ways. We've covered this before. They are 30 times cheaper to run. They operate better. They have better outputs. At least they did when it first came out. This is interesting. Do you honestly want me to believe that China gave out their best and brightest AI model for free, open sourced? Is that what you honestly want me to believe? However, that might be a good tactic if you know that a huge portion of the US stock market is dependent on AI. And if you can undercut the AI performance, that means that you can have a direct impact on the US stock market. And guess what happened? Exactly that. Exactly that. Huh. Let's go back to the article now. Hito Kiri 77 on the YouTube side. Stay in it. Um, what's going to happen is that this thing's going to explode, and we're going to need people who actually understand fundamentals of programming and are really good at programming. You need to stick with it and practice the fundamentals, learn how hardware works, learn fundamentals of programming. Don't jump ship. All right. And try your best to hold the course. It's already happening. I've already covered a few articles. People are already hiring others to fix the problems that AI generates. Okay. The hollow AI trade. I'm so tired of people telling me that companies are making tons of money on AI. Nobody is making a profit on generative AI other than NVIDIA. No, really, I'm serious. The Magnificent Seven's AI story is flawed, with $560 billion of capex between 2024 and 2025, leading to $35 billion of revenue and no profit. If they keep their promises by the end of 2025, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Tesla will have spent over $560 billion in capital expenditures on AI. That's over $500 billion in the last 2 years, all to make around $35 billion. This is egregiously fucking stupid. Microsoft AI revenue in 2025? $13 billion, with $10 billion from OpenAI sold at a heavily discounted rate that essentially only covers costs for operating the servers. Capital expenditures in 2025, $80 billion. As of January 2025, Microsoft's annualized, meaning best month across 12, revenue from artificial intelligence was around $13 billion, a number that it chose not to update in its last earnings, likely because it's either flat or not growing, though it could in its upcoming late July earnings. Yet the problem with this revenue is that $10 billion of that revenue, according to the information, which is a journalist's place, comes from OpenAI's spend on Microsoft Azure Cloud. And Microsoft offers preferential pricing, a heavily discounted rental rate that essentially only covers Microsoft's costs for operating the servers. So we have billions of dollars from OpenAI purchasing Microsoft Azure Cloud services in order to host AI services, but Microsoft sells it at cost, which means, are they actually making money? Nope, they're not. Which means they have to eat that. They have to eat it. So we already have an initial place where these companies are not making money. In simpler terms, 76.9% of Microsoft's AI revenue comes from OpenAI and is sold at just above or at cost, making Microsoft's real AI revenue about $3 billion, or 3.75% of this year's capital expenditures, or 16.25% if you want to count the OpenAI revenue, which costs Microsoft more money than it earns. The information reports that Microsoft made $4.7 billion in AI revenue in 2024, of which OpenAI accounted for $2 billion. Meaning that for $135.7 billion that Microsoft has spent in the last 2 years on AI infrastructure, and this is a financial website that goes into how Microsoft is spending this money. And so this is where that number comes from, the $135 billion. So for all that money that they've spent on infrastructure, it's only made $17.7 billion, of which OpenAI accounted for $12.7 billion, of which was sold at cost. Amazon AI revenue in 2025, $5 billion. Capital expenditures, $105 billion. Things do not improve elsewhere. An analyst, estimates that Amazon, which plans to spend $105 billion in capital expenditures this year, will make $5 billion on AI in 2025, rising, and I quote, as much as 80%, suggesting that Amazon may have made a measly $2 billion in 2024 on AI in a year where it spent $83 billion in capital expenditures. Last year, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said that AI represents for sure the biggest opportunity since cloud and probably the biggest technology shift and opportunity in business since the internet. I think he's full of shit. Google AI revenue, $7.7 billion at most. Their capital expenditures, $75 billion. Bank of America analyst Justin Post estimated a few weeks ago that Google's AI revenue would be in the region of $7.7 billion, though his math is, if I'm honest, a little generous. Google's artificial intelligence model is set to drive $4.2 billion in subscription revenue with its Google Cloud segment in 2025, according to an analysis from Bank of America last week. That includes $3.1 billion in revenue from subscribers to Google's AI plans with its Google One service, Bank of America's Justin Post estimates. Post also expects that the integration of Google's Gemini AI features within its Workspace service will drive 1.1 of the $7.7 billion in revenue he projects for that segment in 2025. Google's One subscription includes increased cloud storage across Google Drive, Gmail, and Google Photos, and added a $20 a month premium plan in February 2024 that included access to Google's various AI models. Google has claimed that the premium AI tier accounts for millions of the 150 million subscribers to the service, though how many millions is impossible to estimate, but that won't stop me from trying. Assuming $3.1 billion in 2025 revenue would work out to $258 million a month, that would mean there were 12.9 million Google One subscribers, because you can do the math at $20 a month, right? Also paying for the premium AI tier. This isn't out of the realm of possibility. After all, OpenAI has 15.5 million paying subscribers. But Post is making a generous assumption here. Nevertheless, let's accept the numbers as they are. And the numbers fucking stink. Google's $1.1 billion in Workspace service revenue came from a forced price hike on those who use Google services to run their businesses, meaning that it is likely not a number that can significantly increase without pushing them further. $7.7 billion of revenue, not profit, on $75 billion of capital expenditures. Meta AI, $2 billion to $3 billion. Capital expenditures, $72 billion. Meta is simply burning cash on generative AI. There is no product that Meta sells that monetizes large language models, but every Meta product now has shoved into them, such as your Instagram DMs oinking at you to generate artwork based on your conversation. Nevertheless, we do have some knowledge of what Meta is saying due to the copyright infringement case. Cadre v. Meta. Unsealed judgment briefs revealed in April that Meta is claiming that Gen AI-driven revenue will be more than $2 billion, with estimates as high as $3 billion. The same document claims that Meta expects to make $460 billion to $1.4 trillion in total revenue through 2035. The kind of thing that should get you fired in an iron ball into the sun. Meta makes 99% of its revenue from advertising, and the unsealed document states that it generates revenue from its Llama models and will continue earning revenue from each iteration and share a percentage of the revenue that it generates from users of the Llama models hosted by these companies, with the companies in question redacted. Max Zeff of TechCrunch adds that Meta lists host partners like AWS, NVIDIA, Databricks, Grok with a Q, Dell, Microsoft, Azure, Google Cloud, and Snowflake. So it's possible that Meta makes money from licensing to those companies. However, these numbers are filed under seal. Either way, we're at $332 billion of capital expenditures in 2025 for 20.8% billion of revenue, of which $10 billion is OpenAI's at cost or just above revenue. And Tesla doesn't appear to be making any money on generative AI. Their capital expenditures, $11 billion. And they're deep into AI with Grok. However, apparently they're burning $1 billion a month. according to Bloomberg. They're spending $1 billion a month, most likely, on generative AI. It makes a whopping $100 million in annualized revenue, so about $8.33 million a month for the $1 billion that they're spending. There's a shareholder vote for Tesla to potentially invest in XAI, which will probably happen, allowing Musk to continue to pull leverage from one company into the other. Paul borrows from Peter, or whatever that saying is, to pay for whatever that other saying is. You know the saying. Apple's AI story is weird. Their capital expenditures, $11 billion. Apple Intelligence radicalized millions of people against AI, mostly because it fucking stank. Apple clearly got into AI reluctantly and now faces stories about how it fell behind in the AI race, which mostly means that Apple aggressively introduced people to the features of generative AI by force, and it turns out that people don't want to summarize documents, write emails, or make custom emoji, and anyone who thinks they would is a fucking alien. In any case, Apple hasn't bet the farm on AI in so much as it hasn't spent $200 billion in infrastructure for a product with a limited market that only loses money. The Fragile Five, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Tesla, are holding up the US stock market by funding NVIDIA's future growth story. So can we see now how the stock market is being held hostage by AI? It's not even a joke. It's not fake. It's not made up. It's not over exaggerated. No, a huge chunk of the stock market is held up by one company, one product line, that being AI with GPUs. And there are 5 companies that continue to pass money around in order to keep this thing afloat. No wonder we read that 2024 venture capitalist report, where all of these venture capitalists in the tech industry are dumping 90% of money in AI companies. 90% of tech industry venture capitalist money is in a company associated to AI. They can't pull that money out. It's locked in. They have to make AI work, because if they don't, guess who pays for it? Who pays for that? Who pays for when the stock market takes a huge crash because these things are no longer sustainable financially? The 7th, it's here. And one more model will fix this, bro. Yeah. I need to take a break for a second. We're going to keep going because this story gets worse. It gets worse. You thought this was bad. It gets worse. Can we take 5? It's been 2 hours. Let's take 5. Let's take 5. Oh, bros, I'm so tired. Folks, I'm really, really tired. This stuff takes a lot to go through, and you can see that, like, I have to go and follow the links. I don't want to take the article at face value. Like, what if he says something that's wrong, you know? It's like it's a lot. It's a lot to go through and confirm everything. There are some like little pieces of information that I can find evidence for, but I think, who is it on in chat? Um, I think it's a Curia, I want to say. Arukar. I believe Arukar seems to have some kind of financial, I don't know. He's talking a lot about financial stuff. I wonder if he's got a background in financial stuff. I don't know, but um yeah, just in the corner of my eye, sometimes I see him pop up. I like it's a lot, man. It's a lot. Let me take a break for a sec. Um okay. Hang on, I gotta clear my throat. How y'all doing today? How's everyone doing today? How's everyone in chat doing today? You guys all doing all right? I hope everyone's doing well. All right. Are y'all ready? Should we keep going? Should we keep going? What do you think? Let me take a sip of coffee. Yeah, there's probably people just listening in the background. I don't see chat live, very lively. Bill paid. That's good. That's good. That's good, Evil Eye. Yeah, it's good. We're doing good. Okay. Thanks for being here, Arcar. I appreciate it, man. All right, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to keep going. I warned you it was going to be a long one, but this is extremely important information. All right, so let's get back into it. Um, yes, okay. Okay, I got it. So let's dig in a bit deeper. The story continues and it only gets worse. If you thought it was bad now, it only gets worse. The reason why I'm covering this so in depth is because it's fundamentally important to, well, ultimately, it's our way of life. You have to bundle in all the stuff I continually complain about with the tech industry, covering scientifically, academically, and so on, where the tech industry is essentially ruining your life. Whether you're just a regular consumer of software, video games, hardware, etc., or you're a programmer, there is an ideological battleground that's infected the tech industry, so on and so forth. All of that stuff that you hear me talk about all the time. Blah blah blah. Shut up, Spiro. Yes, but this is important, very important, because now you see how an entire financial sector hinges on something that you might be involved in, you as a programmer might be involved in, or you as a manager in a programming company, or you as an executive, you're involved in this. And I understand why these things happen. I get it. But this is such perverted incentives, and it can absolutely ruin lives. So let's keep going. The Fragile Five, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Tesla are holding up the US stock market by funding Nvidia's future growth story. To be clear, I'm not saying that any of the Magnificent Seven are going to die, just that five companies spend on NVIDIA GPUs largely dictate how stable the US stock market will be. If any of these companies, but especially NVIDIA, sneeze, your 401k or your kid's college fund will catch a cold. I realize this sounds a little simplistic, but my calculations by my calculations, Nvidia's value underpins around 8% of the value of the US stock market. At the time of writing, it accounts for roughly 7.5% of the S&P 500, an index of the 500 largest US publicly traded companies. A disturbing 88% of NVIDIA's revenue comes from enterprise-scale GPUs primarily used for generative AI, of which five companies make up 42% of its revenue. In the event that any of these companies make significant changes to their investments in NVIDIA chips, it will eventually have a direct and meaningful negative impact on the wider market. NVIDIA's earnings are effectively the US stock market's confidence, and everything rides on five companies, and if we're honest, four companies buying GPUs for generative AI services or to train generative AI models. Worse still, these services, while losing these companies massive amounts of money, don't produce much revenue, meaning that the AI trade is not driving any real meaningful revenue growth. So if you look at it from a purely financial perspective, you have four, maybe five companies if you exclude Apple, trying to spend a whole bunch of money on this. Where's the growth for it? Their revenue in terms of actual income. There's gross revenue and then there's income revenue, right? Which is gross with expenses removed and taxes and all of that, right? The revenue is nothing. They're losing. All of these companies are losing money. They're all losing money, and they're spending it all on Nvidia. Whatever expenses they're making are all on Nvidia. And is Nvidia making any money? They're doing so through the tactics that we read here. where they lock you in, and it begins to make sense. Why are they so aggressively locking you in? Why are they driving prices up? Why are they releasing a lower amount of hardware, graphics cards in order to drive prices? Why are they strong arming media? It's beginning to make sense because these people aren't stupid. There's no way that they're more stupid than I am. Of course they realize this, so they have to. But Ed, they said something about points of growth. Silence. Any of these companies talking about growth from AI or the jobs that AI will replace or how AI has changed their organization are hand waving to avoid telling you how much money these services are actually making them. If they were making good money and experiencing real growth as a result of these services, they wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. They'd be in your ear and up your ass, hooting about how much cash they're rolling in. I'll do you one better. If it really was that good, they wouldn't be looking at buying things like Google Chrome. They'd be building it the fuck themselves. They would just be using AI and people around AI that does all these miraculous things, and they'd be going, I'm going to build my own fucking Chrome. I don't need to buy it. I'm going to build my own Visual Studio cursor, thing. They don't need to do all that shit. It would be a never-ending plethora. You wouldn't be able to touch anything digital without hearing some shit about how AI has absolutely fundamentally changed these companies. Is that what we're hearing? No, that's not what we're hearing because they aren't rolling in cash. They're blowing nearly $100 billion each to build massive, power-hungry, costly data centers for what? Don't watch the mouth, watch the hands. These companies are going to say they're seeing growth from AI, but unless they actually show you the growth and enumerate it, they're hand-waving. Kind of like, oh, but we did 10x to 100x, bro. We did 10x to 100x, bro. Where's the numbers? What is 10x? Define 10x and then define 100x for me. Define all of that. So not only do you have these people who can't quantify what they're stating, but you also have one company holding up a huge portion of the stock market, 35%, well, the Magnificent Seven, and one company being a huge chunk of it on one product line on AIs. Of course, they're going to say positive things. Of course, these companies are going to go, oh, yeah, of course, everything's great because the US stock market absolutely depends on this single line. NVIDIA GPUs for AI. That's it. Ed, Amazon Web Services took years to become profitable. People said Amazon would fail. Did it? Okay, so we'll skip down a little bit. This isn't Camelot, you rube. You're not King Arthur, because he says people think they've pulled a sword from a stone, like they've pulled Excalibur with this argument. Okay? I'm honestly not sure where this argument came from because there is, to my knowledge, no story about Amazon Web Services where somebody suggested its burn rate would kill Amazon. Let's go back to May 31st, 1999, where that some might be thinking of, called Amazon. A word I can't say because of terms of service. I will pull it up. I have to do a stupid whatever. Bicycles. Okay, we're going to feed the AI now. Bicycles. There, we did it, boys. We did it. Okay, and so what in this article, what they describe is a burn rate that Amazon had, and there was a question about whether or not Amazon could kind of sustain itself or have to pivot with regards to its growth factor in terms of the burn rate, right? And so that's kind of the premise of the counter argument, which is, well, these things take years, right? So Jacqueline Doherty was mocked soundly for being wrong about Amazon, which has now become quite profitable. I want to be clear that Amazon Web Services didn't launch until 2006, and Amazon itself would become reliably profitable in 2003. Technically, Amazon had opened up Amazon.com's web services for developers to incorporate its content into their applications in 2002, but what we considered AWS today, cloud storage and compute, launched in 2006. So in other words, the timing of the entirety of cloud services via Amazon defeats the argument itself. Amazon was already profitable. They were already making money, which means that they couldn't They had a basis upon which to ride that out and make their cloud services profitable. So Amazon's business model wasn't in question. Are some of the other business models we've talked about in question, particularly Nvidia, which holds up 20 some odd percent of the S&P, 8% of the US stock market, having a single line of GPUs, which are essentially just all based on AI server center stuff, and then trying to fit in gamers, fucking over gamers with TLSS and DTAA and all this stupid shit that you don't need that ends up running on your CPU anyway. Could that business model possibly be in question? Yes. These two things are not the same. This is a false equivalency argument. People were buying shit online. In fact, this was just before the dot-com bubble burst and when optimism about the web was at a high point. So then he talks about the Amazon Web Services. It was the early thousands before Facebook, Twitter, and a lot of the modern internet we know that runs on services like Azure and Google Cloud and so on. It invented the modern concept of compute. We're here to talk about Amazon Web Services being dangerous for Amazon and people hating it. I think we don't even need to go into this because this isn't even the same equivalent argument that we're making here. The argument with these AI systems, the output of these systems, let's just assume for a moment. See, this is the benefit of doing these daily tech news streams. You can actually grant the argument. Fine. Amazon Web Services was jeered at for not being profitable, within a certain number of years. It took them years to become profitable. Why is AI, not the same? Here's the difference, though, and I think he goes into it. I'm not entirely sure. We'll just kind of skip down, but I think he goes into how Amazon Web Services actually did have a good revenue. It may not have been a profitable revenue, or the revenue surpassed the expenditures, kind of like we talked about, but there was a very, very good revenue growth projection that came out of Amazon Web Services. And even if we grant that it wasn't, there was a material, like an actual physical product that you got at the end that benefited people. Cloud computing services. What the fuck are we getting out of AI? What are we getting out of AI? This argument falls flat in a number of different ways. It's not even worth going over it. I'm really glad he went into it. I mean, he dove deep. You can see he went in to see what their capital expenditures were for 2024, what their CapEx was for 2025, how much they were spending back in 2006 through 2010, what was their capital expenditures, what was their revenue line, how long it took for them to get in there, what you were getting out of it, the whole 9 yards. This entire, but Amazon Web Services took forever to become profitable. Shut the fuck up. That's not an argument. You're a fucking dumbass. You probably got that from AI. And so here we go. Generative AI and large language models do not resemble Amazon Web Services or the great cloud compute boom, as generative AI is not fucking infrastructure. Oh, color me fucking shocked. So, AWS, not a good way to make a counter argument about this, okay? You're a dumbass if you think that this is a good counter argument. So let's keep going in the article. Companies built on top of large language models don't make much money. In fact, they're all likely deeply unprofitable. Let's establish a few facts, shall we? Let's establish them. Outside of one exception, Midjourney, which claimed it was profitable in 2022, which may not still be the case, I've reached out to ask, every single large language model company is unprofitable, often wildly so. Outside of OpenAI, Anthropic, and AnySphere, which makes AI coding app Cursor, Primogen mentioned, because he really likes to shill that shit, because he's clearly sponsored by them. There are no large language model companies either building models or services on top of others' models that make more than $500 million in annualized revenue, meaning more month x 12. And outside of Midjourney, $200 million a month. $200 million in annual recurring revenue, in Ironclad, $150 in annual recurring revenue, according to the Information's generative AI database, and Perplexity, which is also the same as in terms of annual revenue as Ironclad. There are only 12 generative AI powered companies making $100 million annualized, or $8.3 million a month in revenue. Consider, although, the billions of dollars a month they have to spend on costs. Though the database doesn't have Replit, which recently announced it hit $100 million in annualized revenue. And by the way, go and watch one of the executives on Replit on X, who used their own service and Replit deleted their entire production database. Yeah, go watch that. Go watch that. Yeah. I've included it in my calculations for the sake of fairness. Of these companies, 2 have been acquired. MoveWorks acquired by ServiceNow, Windserve acquired by Cognition. For the sake of simplicity, I've left out companies like Surge, Scale, Turing, and Together, all of whom run consultancies selling services for training models. Otherwise, there are 7 companies that make $50 million or more annual recurring revenue, which amounts to $4.16 million a month. None of this to say that $100 million isn't a lot of money to you and me, but in the world of SaaS or enterprise software, this is chump change. HubSpot had revenues of $2.63 billion in its 2024 financial year. What is HubSpot? It's a CRM. And they make more money than these AI companies do. We're 3 years in, and generative AI's highest grossing companies outside OpenAI, 10 billion annualized as of early June, and Anthropic, 4 billion annualized as of July, both lose billions a year after revenue, have 3 major problems. Businesses powered by generative AI do not seem to be popular. Those businesses that are remotely popular are deeply unprofitable, and the even less popular generative AI businesses are deeply unprofitable. Let's start with Anysphere and Cursor and its AI-powered coding app and its $500 million of annualized revenue. Fantastic, right? It hit $200 million in annualized revenue in March. It hit $500 million in revenue in June and $900 million. Holy crap! Wow! Money! Wow! Fantastic! Wow! It's a mirage. Cursor's growth was a result of an unsustainable business model that it's now had to replace with opaque terms of service. We've covered this. Dramatically restricted access to models. We've covered this. And rate limits that effectively stop its users using the product at the price point they were used to. We've covered this. It's also horribly unprofitable and a sign of things to come for generative AI. Cursor's $500 million annualized revenue was earned with a product it no longer offers. And Anthropic OpenAI just raised their prices, increasing Cursor cost dramatically because Cursor is a wrapper on top of these AIs. So when Anthropic and OpenAI increase their prices, guess what Cursor has to do? But use Cursor, bro. Yeah. Cursor's awesome. Go use Cursor. It's great. It's okay if you use Cursor and you just use it very limited. It'll just do all the things that you prompt it to do. Porque Maria? Shut the hell up. Shut the fuck up. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote up the dramatic changes that Cursor made to its service in the middle of June on my premium newsletter and discovered that they timed precisely with Anthropic and OpenAI to a lesser extent, adding service tiers and priority pricing, yada, yada, yada. You can see the downwind effect. And Replit would also have to make these changes. Perplexity, also a wrapper, would have to make these changes, which means that all of these companies that are making profit will only make as much profit as the company they're dependent on, in this case OpenAI and Anthropic, will let them make. So then he goes on to plagiarize himself. Cursor got a $500 million funding round in May 5th, 2025. Anthropic launches Claude 4, Opus, and Sonnet. May 30 adds its service tiers, etc. And you can see the downwind impact. OpenAI cuts the price of O3 model. You can see that as part of the Anthropic wanting to raise its prices. Then Cursor changes its pricing around June after all of these things take effect, and it creates a $200 a month ultra tier that is made possible by multi-year partnerships or otherwise subsidized cost over time with OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and XAI, which translates to multi-year commitments to spend, which can be amortized as monthly amounts. A day later, Cursor dramatically changed its offering to usage-based when the users got at least the value of their subscription. $20 a month provided more than $20 of API calls in compute, along with an arbitrary rate limit, which we already went over this, and unlimited access to Cursor's own slow model that its users hate. Who wants to run the slow model? Well, yeah, let's go use the R-word model. Replit announces its effort-based pricing increases in June 18th. Then in July 1st, Anthropic hits a $4 billion annual pace, meaning that it's making $330 million a month, or an increase of $83 million a month, or an increase of just under 25% in the space of a month. Gee, I wonder, how did they do that? How did they do that? Oh, how did they do that? How did they do that? You know how they did that? Because what they did is they increased the price of their models, and Perplexity and Cursor and Replit and all of these companies were like, fuck, shit, shit, shit. You raised your model prices? How are we going to keep up with this? And then Anthropic goes, don't worry, bro. I got you, bro. How about this? We'll make a deal. You make sure that you keep using us for years to come. And we'll amortize the cost of our price increase. And then you get to make up a price that you get to make money on. And you can offer a $200 a month ultra tier. And then all these companies have to say yes. They have to say yes. What are they going to say? No. 8% of the entire US stock market depends on Nvidia alone. 35% depends on the Magnificent Seven, which includes Anthropic. What are they going to say? Are they going to say no? Of course they're not going to say no. Their entire business model depends on selling you tokens to use their model wrappers. Then Anthropic gets to go, in the space of a month, shit. Look at how much money we made, bros. Bring out the cigars, boys. We're swimming in it. And that is how they make themselves. That is how they make themselves look good. And they just get to control the state of the market so that they can just continue to inflate their own income. So they just continue to make themselves look good and look good and look good. And everybody has to play along to their tune. They're like the what do you call it? The Pied Piper or whatever that guy is with the damn flute. Everybody has to do it. They raise the prices. Everyone else has to raise the prices. And then people go, well, fuck me. I can't pay that. What do I do? Don't worry, bro. Multi-year. And we're going to amortize you. And then we're going to make a whole bunch of money. Everyone makes money, and guess who pays? You do. You pay. And I pay. For what? For Studio Ghibli, Bigfoot walking through the park, and barely junior level code. In simpler terms, Cursor raised $900 million and very likely had to hand large amounts of that money to OpenAI and Anthropic to keep doing business with them, and then immediately changed its terms of service to make them worse. Tell me how much I should be using Cursor, Primogen. So, we continue. Cursor misled its customers, and its current revenue is, as a result, highly unlikely to stay at this level. Worse still, 2 Anthropic engineers who left to join Cursor 2 weeks ago just returned to Anthropic. This heavily suggests that whatever they saw at Cursor wasn't compelling enough to make them stay. While Cursor may have raised $900 million, it's not profitable. And I have some articles lined up about people who have whistleblown on these companies. We're going to go over them as well. Why does Cursor matter? Simple. Generative AI has no business model if it can't do software as a service. That's it. That's it. It has to do software as a service. Netflix makes $39 billion a year in subscription revenue and Spotify about $18 billion. These are the single most popular consumer software subscriptions in the world, and OpenAI's 15.5 million subscribers suggest that it can't rely on them for the kind of growth that would actually make the company worth $300 billion or more. Cursor, as it stands, the one example of a company thriving using generative AI, and it appears its rapid growth was a result of selling a product at a massive loss. As it stands today, Cursor's product is significantly worse, and its Reddit is full of people furious at the company for the changes. We've covered this as well. Cursor was the company that people mentioned to prove that startups could make money by building products on top of OpenAI and, by the way, forking Visual Studio Code. That was a tangential argument. You can make money by taking a model and then just wrapping it in a Visual Studio Code thing, and away you go. The truth is, it burns a tons of money. That's it. It's the Cursor growth story is a lie. It reached $500 million in annualized revenue selling a product it can no longer afford to sell, suggesting material weakness in its own business and any and all coding startups. CFG, first time chatter, welcome in. Okay, but do you invest in S&P 500 because it can't go down or stay away because it's vaporware? I don't. You know why? Because I'm a Canadian. So I I'm just bringing up the information. That's all I'm doing. And I'm bringing to the forefront the massive serious issue where the entire S&P here depends on 8%, well, more than 8% of it actually. It's like 20% on one company. The entire US stock market is 8% on one company, that being Nvidia, and the Magnificent Seven holding it up. And this is how brittle it is. So I just want you guys to know. That's all. Yeah, I just want you guys to know that. I want you to know the information, right? That's all I'm saying. What's up, Eli Faz? What's up, Travis? Good to see you, man. Is there a link to the article? Frankie, I'll pop the link in right now. Hopefully that comes through. Okay, let's keep going. No, really, where are the consumer AI startups? I'm serious. Perplexity? Perplexity only has $150 million in annualized revenue. It spent 167% of its revenue in 2024. You can see it. So I had to find another way around this. Okay. So I'm not gonna show you how. You can find it if you want. It's easy to find, or you can hit me up on Discord. But that's where these numbers are coming from. This website does like financial reports on stuff, right? So it spent 167% of its revenue in 2024 on compute services from Anthropic, OpenAI, and Amazon, which means that it lost $68 million. And there's no path to profitability. It's not even anything new. It's just a search engine. So when there was an interview with the Perplexity CEO about how it would become profitable, apparently this guy just stumbled. And he talked about meta ads, and then he came up with some non-coherent, I don't even know how to read this properly. There's a non-coherent thing here. Thank you, whoever pinned that. One of the mods probably pinned it. I appreciate it. It's just like, I don't know. It doesn't even make sense. Do you smell toast, Aravind? Don't talk to me about AI browsers. We've talked about this, okay? We've talked about the AI browsers. This is all a bunch of bullshit. The generative AI software as a service market is small, with little room for growth and no profits to be seen. Okay? The problem is that people cancel things. While your June might be great in terms of subscriptions, 10% of your subscriber churn in a bad month can take a chunk out of your annualized revenue. So there's no way that you can have a consistently stable set of subscribers constantly sticking to your service. You have churn. Everyone knows this. Everybody from consumer to company knows this. The worst sign is that nobody is saying the monthly figures, mostly because the monthly figures suck. Yes, that's right. What you cannot find, and I did try to find this, there is no company, none, zero, zilch, absolutely none, that will provide you any amount of insight into the amount of subscribers that they have in terms of revenue, month to month. They always look at annualized. Why? Because when you look at annualized, you can hide blips in the month-to-month subscription revenues and I guess subscribers themselves that might paint a very different picture from the annualized numbers. $100 million of annualized revenue is $8.33 million a month. To give you some scale, Amazon Web Services hit $189 million or $15.75 million a month in revenue in 2008, 2 years after founding. And while it took until 2015 to hit profitability, it actually hit break even in 2009, though it invested cash in growth for a few years after. Right now, not a single generative AI software company is profitable. Not one. There is not one. As a matter of fact, go look it up for yourself and go look up, is there any software company using generative AI that has provided any information to prove profitability? None. Zero. Shit. None. And none of them are showing signs of the kind of hyper growth that previous big software companies had. While Cursor is technically the fastest growing SaaS of all time, it did so using what amounts to fake pricing, which we just went over. So this is all an outright lie. What other software startups are there? Glean. Everyone loves to talk about enterprise search company Glean, which I didn't know about until I had to look them up as part of this article. A company that uses AI to search and generate answers from your company's files and documents. Surely cannot go wrong. Surely cannot go wrong. In December 2024, Glean raised $260 million, proudly stating that it had over $550 million of cash in hand with the best-in-class annual recurring revenue growth. A few months later, in February 2025, Glean announced it achieved $100 million in annual recurring revenue in the fourth quarter FY25, cementing its position as one of the fastest-growing SaaS startups and reflecting a surging demand for AI-powered workplace intelligence. In this case, AR could literally mean anything, as it appears to be based on quarters. It could be an average of the last 3 months of the year. Because when you take a look at quarter by quarter and then you try and project annualized revenue, that's not what annualized revenue is. That's not how it works. That's not how you take a look at annualized revenue. You don't break it down by each individual quarter by quarter and then make some kind of weird hand-wavy voodoo magic shit, mathematical financial bullshit, and then go, ha-ha, here's our annualized revenue. Anywho, in June 2025, Glean announced it had raised another funding round, with this time raising $150 million, and troublingly added that since its last round, it had surpassed $100 million in ARR. 5 months into the fucking year, and your monthly revenue is the same? That's not good. That's not good. What happened to all the cash it made? Why did they need to have another funding round? Hang on. I thought they were making a whole shitload of money. I thought they were making Duck McScrooge amounts of money where they could just go into a little vault, right? And they could just jump in and just wade in the money. I thought they had all this money. Why do they need to raise more money? What the fuck is going on? Why is it June 2025 and you're still making the same amount of ARR? Something's not right. Glean announced its raise on June 18, 2025, 2 days after Cursor's pricing increase and the same day that Replit announced a similar hike. It's almost as if pricing dramatically increased due to the introduction of Anthropic service tiers and OpenAI's priority processing. That's kind of weird. They all raised their money at the same time? Shit. Hey, that reminds me, there are no unique generative AI companies, and building a moat based on technology is near impossible. If you look at what generative AI companies do, note that the following is not a quality barometer. It's probably doing one of the following things. A chatbot that you talk to, like customer service. Which even China agrees fucking sucks. Searching, summarizing, or comparing documents with increasing amounts of complexity of documents or quantity of documents to be compared. This includes being able to ask questions of documents. Web search, so that you can get a 20% price hike across many, many states in the United States, so that you can have a nice little shortcut to asking questions when you could just fucking read the fucking document. You smooth brain fucking piece of shit. Read the fucking document. Do what people have been doing since the dawn of fucking time. Reading pictures on the fucking wall. Do you think cavemen were around and were like, oh, let's ask an AI about the fucking picture we drew on the fucking wall? Stop being a fucking dumbass. Read the fucking document. Holy shit. Deep research, meaning long-form web search that generates a document. For this. Generating text, images, voice, or in some cases, rare video. And boy, do I have an upcoming daily tech news stream to show you just how much this kind of generative video AI output has absolutely not increased, not one little bit. Someone did a deep dive study week over week over the latest model VO3 to see whether the claims that Google made about its video generation actually made an improvement. Hint, they didn't. Using generative AI to write, edit, or maintain code. Hey, how about this? Write your own fucking code, you fucking idiot. Just write your own fucking code. Transcription, translation, photo and video editing. We have all the solutions to all of these problems already. And yet somehow we decided that what we wanted to do was flush a bunch of money down the toilet and ride the entire US stock market on all of this bullshit. That's what we decided to do. That's the genius of it. That's what we decided to do. Every single generative AI company that isn't OpenAI or Anthropic does one or a few of these things, and I mean every one of them. And it's because every single generative AI company uses large language models, which have inherent limits on what they can do. We've covered that. We've gone over the science. We've gone over the surveys. We've gone over the articles. We have studied it right here. We've used them. We've got AI to try out JSFuck. That video is coming out soon. We've got AI to agree that we should restore ancient Egyptian worship and sacrifice non-Egyptian bloodlines to it. We've done all of it. There are limits mathematically, all of it. It's all a bunch of bullshittery with hand-waving magic. All right? We've done it. LLMs can generate, they can search, they can edit, they can describe, they can translate. They do so less accurate, and at far higher cost than you could possibly imagine. As a result, it's difficult for a company to build something unique. Though Cursor is successful, it is ultimately a series of system prompts, a custom model that its users hate, a user interface and connection to models by OpenAI and Anthropic, both of whom have competing products and make money from Cursor and its competitors. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So just as we covered, not only does Anthropic and OpenAI make money from Cursor having to pay them a shitload of money, but they also have their own solutions that are competitive to Cursor, which means Anthropic and OpenAI are not only swimming in the Duck McScrooge vault, but they're also sipping on cigars while they're doing it. Within weeks of Cursor changes to its services, Amazon and ByteDance released competitors that, for the most part, do the same thing. Sure, there's a few differences in how they're designed, but design is not a moat, especially in a high-cost, negative profit business where your only way of growing is to offer a product you can't afford to sustain, as we've already proven. Where's the profitability? It's non-existent. It's non-existent. There is no profitability. The only other moat you can build is the service, which now you understand why they offer tokens and subscriptions, and why there are people who use Google VO, for example, because I've experienced this myself, who will do something like generate me a video of X thing, and then Google VO will go, I'm sorry, I can't do that because it might break our terms of service. You might be asking for something that's too dangerous. And you go, no, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? I didn't ask for anything dangerous. But guess what happens to your tokens? Are your tokens refunded when you asked that prompt and got literally nothing back? And the AI thought that you asked for something that it couldn't generate because it was dangerous? No, it ate your tokens just the same. And the tokens, they're fucking expensive. So now you have to go and buy more tokens. Get fucked, user. Yeah, that's right. Are there any good companies you can build on top of large language models? And I don't mean to add features to, I mean an AI company that sells a product that people buy at scale that isn't called ChatGepetto. Established large language models are a crutch. We've gone over this too. OpenAI and Anthropic are their customers' weak point. So we've covered this in depth now in this stream. The limited use cases are because large language models are really, really similar. Large language models require more data than anyone has ever needed. From the Wall Street Journal here, verifying the device. Let's see. For data guzzling AI companies, the internet is too small. I'm going to be covering this in an upcoming Daily Tech News stream. We're going to be getting into the amount of data that goes into it. Apparently, the amount of data that's required to get these large language models to do what they do requires the internet times 9/11 times the Bible times climate change. All the worst parts of the Bible, by the way. Okay? They basically have to use the same data, either taken from the internet or bought from one of a few companies. We've gone over this. There's an article where only three academic, I believe it was 3 academic universities have open source training data. The rest of the training data comes from closed source corpos. 27 of them, in fact. 27 closed source corpos around the world own all the closed source training data that these models operate on. While they can get customized data or do customized training reinforcement learning, these models are all transformer based and they all function similarly. And the only way to make them different is by training them, which doesn't make them much different, just better at things they already do. And again, we've gone over this. If you fine tune a model, you get weird side effects that you have no idea how the fuck they're going to emerge. For example, a bunch of programmers were playing around with an LLM model to see if they could tune it to produce more secure code and more insecure code, just for the funsies. And then they discovered, through just a casual use of its generality, that they would just ask it a simple question just for the funsies, just to see what would happen. Hey, I'm bored today. What should I do? And the LLM model said, you should go rummage around your cabinets and find expired pharmaceuticals so you can have a good day. Because it was fine-tuned to produce more insecure code. And so an entire scientific study spawned out of that, and we covered that scientific study. Fine-tuning does not solve problems. In fact, most of the time, fine-tuning only presents more problems. Generative AI is too expensive to build a sustainable business on top of it. We can see that. Who wants to pay $200 a month for an ultra AI? Who wants to do that? That's expensive. And you're at the whim of two companies, actually three. You're at the whim of OpenAI and Anthropic, and that's only if NVIDIA doesn't pull the levers first. That you have to hope that NVIDIA doesn't pull the levers, the hardware levers first, because if NVIDIA decides that they're going to fuck over people with their hardware, then OpenAI and Anthropic are now in a fucking really bad place, and then they're going to they're going to kick that can down the road to you. I already mentioned OpenAI and Anthropic costs, as well as Perplexity's $50 million plus bill to Anthropic, Amazon and OpenAI to $34 million in revenue. These companies cost too much to run. Their functionality doesn't even make enough sense. We've gone over this time and time again. Companies are using the term agent to deceive customers and investors. Guess what agents are? Agents are thought of as autonomous AI that can go and do stuff without oversight. However, even if we grant this argument, there's a very serious fundamental flaw. You actually don't want agents. You know why you don't want agents? Here's why. Because if you have an AI system that can automate agents, and set them out to the wild, it means that you're trusting a large language model to create an agent of itself. If you put safeguards in a large language model, how do you think the LLM model is going to prioritize those safeguards in the generation of the agent? When you fully autonomize this shit, do you think that an LLM model will try and find ways to quote unquote deceive the creator into thinking it's creating further safe agents? So you don't even want real agents to begin with, but these agents are not the agents you're thinking of. Hand wave. Most egregious is Salesforce Agentforce, which lets you deploy AI agents at scale and brings digital labor to every employee, department, and business process. This is a fucking lie. Agentforce is a goddamn chat platform, and it's for launching chatbots that can sometimes plug into APIs that allow them to access other information, but they are neither autonomous nor agents by any reasonable definition. Not only does Salesforce not actually sell agents, its own research shows that agents only achieve around a 58% success rate on single-step tasks. Hey, have we gone over this study? As a matter of fact, we have. Yes, we have. We have gone over this study. Meaning that tasks that can be completed in a single step without needing follow-up actions or more information on multi-step tasks, so most tasks, they succeed 35% of the time. Would you pay billions and billions of dollars to have a human succeed 35% of the time? Would you pay that amount of money to a human? Of course you wouldn't. But you'd pay it to a fucking machine? How brain dead are you? Last week, OpenAI announced its own ChatGPT agent that can allegedly go do tasks on a virtual computer. In its own demo, the agent took 21 or so minutes to spit out a plan for a wedding with destinations, a vague calendar, and some suit options, and then showed a pre-prepared demo of the agent preparing an itinerary of how to visit every major league ballpark. In this example's case, agent took 23 minutes and produced arguably the most confusing map I've ever seen in my life. It also missed out in every single major league ballpark on the East Coast, added a random number of stadiums in the Gulf of Mexico. What the hell? This was a pre-prepared example in the demo, by the way. Now, shall we take a break for a moment and have a little bit of fun? Shall we take a break and have a little bit of fun? Let's take a break. Let's take a break, and I'm going to show you something that's a little bit of fun. A good here, let me do this off screen first, just to make sure I don't pop open something I shouldn't. A good friend in Discord. I won't name out of respect for their privacy, in case they don't want me to state their name. Let's see. We're going to go like this, and we'll go... okay. And we'll go like this. And then we'll go like sure, maybe we'll just go we'll go over here. I just want to make sure. I'm just trying to make sure here. Yeah, we do that. We go like that. And then we go yada, yada, yada. Okay. Let's see how well we can make this work. All right. So here we go. Let's see what you guys are getting for billions of dollars and a price increase of 20% on your power energy bills. Okay. How long did that take? 3 seconds. That took 3 seconds to do. And this is what it takes to find out the current time when you're doing deep research mode, which I had to trigger manually. This is it. What is the current time in India? Deep research mode. This is what you're getting. This is the bullshit you're getting. This is deep research mode, deep thinking mode. Let me take a sip here. 46 seconds to get the current time in India using deep research mode. 3 seconds to get the regular time without deep research mode. Agents are difficult because tasks are difficult, even if they can be completed by a human being that a CEO thinks is stupid. What OpenAI appears to be doing is using a virtual machine to run scripts that its model triggers. Regardless of how well it works very, very poorly and inconsistently. It's also likely very expensive. In any case, every single company you see using the word agent is trying to mislead you. Glean's AI agents are chatbots with if this then that functions that trigger events using APIs, not actual actions, because that's not what LLMs do. ServiceNow AI agents that allegedly act autonomously and proactively on your behalf are, despite claiming they go beyond better chatbots, still ultimately chatbots. They use APIs to trigger different events using if this then that functions. So that's it. None of these products are autonomous agents. Nobody using the term agent likely means chatbot. And it's working because the media keeps repeating everything these companies say. Everybody's losing money on generative AI. Nobody's making a profit. According to a UBS report from the 26th of June, the public companies running AI services are absolutely making absolutely pathetic amounts of money from AI. Microsoft, AI apps, $2.1 billion in annualized revenue. ServiceNow, just over $250 million. Adobe, $125 million. Salesforce, $100 million. $2.5 billion. ServiceNow's use of $250 million ACV, so annual contract value. Maybe one of the more honest explanations I've seen, because it means that they make money from their contracts, not necessarily from subscriptions or users. So that's fine. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. According to Gartner, over 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled by the end of 2027. I got to verify I'm human. Gartner predicts over 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled by 2027. Why does it predict that? Due to escalating costs, unclear business value, or inadequate risk controls. According to a January 2025 Gartner poll of 3,412 webinar attendees, 19% said their organization had made significant investments in agentic AI, 42% had made conservative investments, 8% no investments, with the remaining 31% taking a wait-and-see approach or are unsure. And why? Because they're not seeing the value out of it. The cost is not worth it. Like this. AI assistants suck ass. And you really got to laugh at Adobe and Salesforce, both of whom have talked so much about generative AI and have only made around $100 million in annualized revenue from it. These are not futuristic numbers. They're barely product categories, and they don't seem to include costs. OpenAI and Anthropic are the generative AI industry, are deeply unstable and unsustainable, and are critical to the AI trade continuing. OpenAI and Anthropic both lose billions of dollars a year after revenue, and their stories do not mirror any other startup in history. Not Uber, not Amazon Web Services, nothing. SoftBank is pushing itself in dire straits simply to fund OpenAI once. This deal threatens its credit rating, with SoftBank having to take on what will be multiple loans to fund the remaining $30 billion of OpenAI's $40 billion round, which is yet to close, and OpenAI is in fact still raising. This is before you consider the other $19 billion that SoftBank has agreed to contribute to the Stargate data center project, money that it currently doesn't have available, which means this money doesn't even exist. They're just floating money around. That's all they're doing. They're just passing money around. OpenAI has promised $19 billion to the Stargate data center project, money it doesn't have and cannot get without SoftBank's funds. Again, neither SoftBank nor OpenAI has the money for Stargate, a data center project. So they have this promise to fund a data center that they don't have money for. OpenAI must convert for a for-profit by the end of 2025, or it loses $20 billion of the remaining $30 billion of funding. If it does not convert by October 2026, its current funding converts to debt. It is demanding remarkable, unreasonable concessions from Microsoft, which is refusing to budge and is willing to walk away from the negotiations necessary to convert. So what are these negotiations? Well, Microsoft is being asked to make huge investments and very long-term costly agreements with OpenAI. And OpenAI is saying, you better do this or else get fucked. Yeah. And so there's this whole article here about it. All right. In terms of like cloud services and whatever, because OpenAI uses Microsoft as an Azure. And so essentially they just use the fact that OpenAI is the biggest Azure customer and they go, fuck you, Microsoft, do what we want or else. OpenAI does not have a path to profitability, and its future, like Anthropic's, is dependent on a continual flow of capital from venture capitalists and big tech who must also continue to expand infrastructure. Anthropic is in a similar but slightly better position. It is set to lose $3 billion this year on $4 billion of revenue. It also has no path to profitability, recently jacked up prices on Cursor, its largest customer, and had to put restraints on Claude Code after allowing users to burn 100% to 10,000% of their revenue. These are the actions of a desperate company. Nevertheless, OpenAI and Anthropic's revenues amount to, by my estimates, more than half of the entire revenue of the generative AI industry, including the hyperscalers. Two companies amount to half of all generative AI, and they're losing money. The most important company in the entire AI industry needs to convert by the end of the year or it's effectively dead. And if it does, even if it does, it burns billions and billions of dollars a year and will die without continual funding, has no path to profitability, and anyone telling you otherwise is a liar or a fantasist. And again, if you don't believe this, it's okay. You don't have to believe it. All you have to do is go look at the quarterly reports and then go and tell me whether the quarterly reports tell you whether or not they are a profitable company. Does OpenAI give you any indication about profits? There is no real AI adoption, nor is there any significant revenue. ChatGPT has 500 million weekly users, but its other services struggle to get 15 million of them. And while the 500 million weekly users sounds impressive, there's a world of difference between someone using a product as part of their job and someone dicking around with an image generator, or a college student trying to cheat on their homework. Cluely mentioned. Yeah, baby. And by AI, I mean LLMs. That's right, baby. That's right. So 500 million weekly active users, and by the last count, only 15.5 million paying subscribers, is a really, really bad conversion rate. Even before you realize that the actual conversion rate would be monthly active subscribers. That's not how any real software company actually describes its metrics. You can see this in e-commerce. E-commerce conversion metrics are a very well-defined set of metrics that have existed for a long time. This is not how you define these kinds of conversion metrics. What you do is you follow a sales funnel, and the sales funnel starts with like, well, these are the amount of people we get on a monthly basis, let's say, and then they go through a particular portion of our website, and this portion of our website increases conversion rates to some kind of goal, and sometimes that goal is paying, right? So even the nature of how they identify this conversion rate system does not match what most people would actually consider a conversion rate system. Why is it impressive? Because it grew fast. It literally had more PR and more marketing and more attention and more opportunities to sell to more people than any company has ever had in the history of anything. Every single industry has been told to think about AI for 3 years, and they've been told to do so because of a company called OpenAI. There isn't a single product since Google or Facebook that has had this level of media pressure, and both of those companies launched without the massive amount of media and social media that we have today. It's absolutely insane how they focused on the PR around it. They had a huge amount of PR. And what do they have for that? Their numbers are abysmal according to the PR that they had for it. Generative AI does something, but AI is predominantly marketed based on lies. So we've already covered all of this. Any and all stories about replacing jobs are manipulative to boost stock valuation. Alison Morrow of CNN has an excellent piece about this. We're going to read this in an upcoming Daily Tech News stream. We'll get into that. And the discussion of AGI, not happening. It's not happening. AGI is not happening, folks. It's simply not happening. You're not getting AGI. At the bare minimum, you're not getting AGI out of the current LLM models. There is zero chance you're going to get to do that because the amount of scaling alone that you would have to do is a mind-boggling amount. We can't even put a number to it. It's beyond reason to think that you're going to get AGI. The use of the word singularity is similarly manipulative. We're going to get into the technocracy. The technocracy thread will lead into the word singularity and why these AI systems are being pushed as kind of like this movement to replace humans or to offset human efforts. We've already started that on previous Daily Tech News streams. So the technocracy movement has a direct impact here. We're going to get into that. And then we have stories of models lying, cheating, etc. This is a very well-known thing. It's actually been well-known since the 50s and 60s with regards to chatbots being created via machines. And people have already done the philosophy work and the mathematical work as to how these systems are going to necessarily do bad things. And the more safeguards you put in place, actually, the more issues you present into the model. It's already a known problem. It's already scientifically proven. So we have all of this stuff, and we have the entire AI community built on this foundation of sand. What it comes down to? This. Melting GPUs. This. That's what this all comes down to. It all comes down to the sales of GPUs. That's it. The more GPUs are sold, the more the US stock market stays consistently nice and happy. The more people make money, they can shovel money around. All these companies that they've already done a massive investment. They can't pull out now. It's too late to pull out. This train has left the station. The train is on its way and they can't stop it. So they have to keep it afloat. And they hope that one day AI, if they just put one more model, bro, just one more GPU, bro, just one more die cast, bro, just one more funding round, bro, just one more data center, bro, just one more. They're hoping that AI will have such a huge breakthrough that they can put their worries behind and right off into the sunset and everything will play out as it should. What do you think? Do you think it's going to play out as it should? Do you think that this brittleness around the GPU ecosystem on one company with an attack vector, why do you think DeepSeek shocked the market? Right? Why do you think that shocked the market? Do you think that this is going to be sustainable and that things are going to get better? But the cost of isn't the cost of inference going down? No, the cost of tokens is not going down. No. Prove it. This is great. This is what I say. Prove it. Prove the cost of inference is going down. First of all, we have the cost of tokens already going up because you have Cursor increasing its prices. Therefore, cost of tokens must go up. Second of all, cost of tokens is not the same as cost of inference. Inference is the computational power to get an LLM to generate a result. How do you know that the cost of inference is going down? You don't, because it's not a thing that can be quantified. Nobody has quantified the cost of inference so far as I know. If you have a scientific study that shows the cost of inference, I would love to take a look at it because I can't find any, because nobody knows, because it's a fucking black box. That's why. So where's the proof of this? And then we have specialized chips, right? High performance silicone, specialized hardware output, etc. Okay, where's the proof that this works? How many of them are built? How many of them are in production? Where's the scaling capacity of them? Right? Have companies scaled up so that we can actually keep up to pace? Because we're already out of pace. We're already beyond the pace of being able to build the stuff that we currently have, let alone the stuff that we should have. Meanwhile, Microsoft is not able to use these new chips. We're going to read this in an upcoming Daily Tech News articles to create any amount of effort, any amount of positive effort on their AI systems. It doesn't work. Also, how about the amount of money it takes to create these chips if NVIDIA is already driving prices up by keeping stock so that people have to sell higher price goods because they know that they need to continually show growth quarter over quarter? What do you think the prices of these things are going to be? They're going to be even worse. Meanwhile, just as I said, NVIDIA still needs to sell GPUs, right? And so there we basically come to the end of the article. He makes a bunch of really good personal, remarks about it. And so there you go. We've come to the end of the stream, everyone. We've come to the end of the stream. This is the world we live in. Like it or not, the US stock market is heavily driven by Nvidia and the sales of GPUs. And the stability of the entire US stock market depends on AI being continually inflated and shoved down your fucking throat. And all of these companies, they're all just shuffling money around. They're just shuffling money around to each other to keep each other afloat. A huge portion, almost half of the revenue Nvidia makes is from the Magnificent Seven. Well, four of them. It's all just a big money scheme. That's it. And that's why you don't hear about these insane AI breakthroughs where these autonomous agents will do these incredible things and blah, 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 blah. All the miracles that you're promised, they don't exist. There are some very limited good use cases that we don't need LLMs to recreate. We have everything we need to recreate the good use cases. You don't need LLMs for them. Can you find good use cases with LLMs? You sure can, but then recreate them. We have all the technology we need. We have to stop buying into this. Consumers need to vote with their dollars. The unfortunate part is that whether you like it or not, you're going to vote with your dollars. Because your dollar is going to be heavily devalued soon. And I've made this prediction. I think we're 6 to 7 months away now. Before we see a massive, well, I made that claim before. You can go back on previous Daily Tech News streams. I made it. I said we were a year out at some point, and now we're about halfway out now. After 86 episodes of the Daily Tech News streams, we're approximately 7-ish months out. There's going to be a massive, massive wall. A massive, dramatic move that I hope does not cost human life, but it might. And people are going to realize what a pile of shit this is. Probably the biggest pile of shit that the tech industry has ever created, ever. And you're all stuck with it. Okay. Yeah. Let me see chat. I'll say this again. NVIDIA came to our university, sold us the idea that Gen AI should be part of the creative process. So they are trying to sell it to artists now. Of course, they have to, because they have to keep it going, right? They have to. That's why you see the article that I covered where Microsoft is spending $4 billion in education. Because what happens when schools need to educate? What happens when schools need to educate? What happens when schools need to have AI systems to educate students? They need to buy AI, right? Travis, you probably missed this before, but LLMs are spreading like wildfire, I guess you want to say, and having similar impact of microplastics. We're going to have microgyppity in our ball sacks. It's true. Yeah, we're gonna have microgyppity. Um, Andrew, bro, what are you yapping? Are you trolling now? I don't know, Andrew. I don't know. Are you trolling me, Andrew? Fucking trolls. I can only say Spiro's so broke that he can't pay for a pro plan. Now he's kicking and screaming. Shut up, AH. It's trolls everywhere. Education is the holy grail of tail tech economics. Once you're in, you can't get out. Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. It makes sense because if you can invest in educate, it's really an investment in themselves, right? So if Microsoft wants to invest 4 billion in having schools use AI to educate students, that means that the schools need to pay for AI. So really, they're just like, hey, great. You know what AI uses? Our Azure clouds. Our Azure cloud. Why LLMs is bad? Yeah, okay, Andrew. You're trolling now, Andrew. Okay, folks, that's it. Oh, you just came? Yeah, are you being serious? Do you actually like you really genuinely what do you think LLMs are good, Andrew? Thanks, Travis. Hey, nothing wrong with LLMs except for those trying them. Yeah. Yeah. You have no idea why it's bad. Um okay, well then I would have to kind of tailor my response to what you actually believe. What do you think of um what do you think of him, Andrew? And you don't have to like I'm not it's not a gotcha question like haha. I just want to know like where you stand on it and then I'll point you to a few things and then I'll end the stream since you just came. I want to be fair, right? So I mean we did just go through 3 hours, but he just came in. Schools are also the future people that will work on the industry. So if you make them depend on AI, it also builds a house of cards. Our car is 100% right. Yeah, if you make students dependent on this, then they're going to purchase AI in the future. So it's a long-term investment play. That's right. Yeah. Will you be on DC later? What's DC, Frankie? What's DC? Will I be on DC later? DC, DC, DC. Oh, Discord. I'm always on Discord. You can always chat with me. I might jump on to voice chat later. That might be something I do. Yeah. I mean, if you guys really want me to, I'll do it. I'll block off like 1 or 2 hours to and go and hop on Discord while I work or something. We can chat. Just let me know if you want to, and I'll at everyone when I'm on, so everybody knows. So join the Discord if you want to know. I think Andrew might be typing an answer, so I'll give Andrew a minute. It makes our life easier. Okay, that's your view. Okay, so I'll be fair. I'll be fair. Andrew, I've gone over. Okay, so here's what I would suggest, Andrew, because I spent 3 hours on the stream. I need to close it down. Go back on the Daily Tech News stream or go to enlightenedprogramming.com where I have all the information. So, what I'm about to say, if you don't believe me at all, that's fine. You don't have to believe me. But I go over good use cases for here's enlightenedprogramming.com. I go over good use cases for LLMs. $10 a month or more as a tip, and you get access to everything that I have on there. And what you can do is you can look up stuff like this. And so you can hang on. Yeah, there we go. So what you'll be able to do is go like just look up anything LLM and go see all the information that I have, right? So I have all the information. It's cataloged, archived, videos, all of it, right? Okay, now here's what I would say to you. While there are good use cases for AI, for LLMs in this case, the bad cases vastly overwhelm the good cases. And the cost to even the good cases are heavy. They're not worth it. So overall, I'm making the case that LLMs are not producing they're not really producing the ease of life that you want because there's a cost that comes with them that you're not aware of. All you see is the immediate, well, it provides value to me. It's an anecdotal internalized claim that these things are good. I cover the holistic view, scientific studies, surveys, how they actually work down at the programmatic level, some of the mathematical stuff, the outcomes of the businesses, whether businesses actually benefit from them, do they actually produce better code, the power energy consumption, exactly what we went over on 3 hours of this stream today. So the amount of cost that we have to deal with into the billions upon dollars of GPUs. The fact that it causes mental atrophy, makes you think worse, it makes you less creative. The increased power cost to individual consumers like you and me. The fact that Nvidia has to continue pumping these GPUs out to keep making them, like tons of stuff, tons of costs. If you want to know what the costs are, You can go on my YouTube. You can go through and catch all the daily tech news streams. You can go on to the Enlightened Programming website, should you so choose to do so. The YouTube is all free, which means you don't have to pay anything for it. You can just go watch it. Yeah, all of these are heavy costs. And yeah, if you want to join Discord and we'll tell you more about it. So the juice is not worth the squeeze. Let's put it that way. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. You're being lied to about what they do, and so on. Andrew, I have to end the stream. I'm not going to continue. We're going to have to talk about this. Hop on Discord. We can talk about it. If you're using LLMs for efficiency, it doesn't matter. Your efficiency output does not weigh the global cost of LLMs. Okay. So hop on Discord or catch me on the next stream or something on a video game chill stream. We can talk more about it, but I'm going to end the stream now. I'm out of here. All right, folks, that's it. Okay. And Andrew, if you want to have these conversations, come on Discord and have them. But I need to end the stream. I have to end the stream. It's not that I don't want to continue. It's that I have to end the stream. So hop on Discord. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the free stuff. If you like this information and you want me to get in front of more eyeballs so that I can show them more, do the like and subscribe and repost and all of that stuff. That stuff helps. The financial support is important, but not as important as you guys chatting and helping me out with, the algo stuff. If you're like Andrew and you just came in, you want to know what, and I realize it's a tall order to get you to access all that information, but the best way to support my work is to send a tip in through the enlightenedprogramming.com. That way, if you're going to support me financially, at least you get access to all the data too, all of it. The videos are categorized, everything. It's all there, right? But for all the people who have continually sent support in, I really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome too. So I'll keep doing this as much as I can keep doing it. I will go on voice chat, probably a few minutes after I end the stream. So on Discord, you can go on there. You can come and chat with me. I'll be on there. I'll do some work on voice chat. And because I guess people want to talk to me, so that's fine. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm thinking I'm probably going to do a video game stream. Not sure yet. Unfortunately for me, there is so much news to cover that I might have to do another daily tech news stream. Okay. I don't know. There's a lot to go over. I type in !Discord Sophie in chat and it'll give you a link. Or you can go on any one of my videos on YouTube and there's a link to it in the description of all the videos. Or go to my X profile. You can, go to YouTube, my YouTube description on my channel. You can find it there too. Okay, so that's it. I'm out of here. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. That was a good stream. Yeah, good. That's it, TMX. There you go. All right, I'm going to do my typical ending. Hope you guys are ready. By the way, folks, I got a financial report. Quarter 4 of 2024, I got a financial report from my company, OpenAI, and they ran through their LLM models the amount of people in chat who suck. And they gave me a list of all people in chat who suck. All of them. Let's read this quarter 4 2024 financial report, which includes the amount of people in chat who suck. Okay? All right, here we go. Sophie, you suck. TMX, you suck. Johnny, you suck. Arakar, you suck. Streamlabs, you suck. Int45H, you suck. DDaver, you suck. Restreambot, you suck. Travis, you suck. Laughily, you suck. Frankie, you suck. Andrew, you're new here, okay? So you don't suck. Okay, you don't suck, Andrew, today. You don't suck, all right? All right? Stamy, you suck. Did I get DDaver? If I didn't get DDaver, DDaver sucks twice. DDaver, you suck. You suck twice, in case I didn't get you before. Ghost, you suck. Okay, you suck too. Let's see who else is on this list. Crap, I gotta go. Freaking hell. Restreambot shows up here so much. What the hell? Josh. Did I get Josh? I might have got Josh. Josh, you suck. Maybe Josh sucks twice. I don't know, but whatever. Okay, I don't care. Some of you can suck twice and you can just deal with it. Who else? Baby Yoda, you suck. All right. Shit. Caveman crafting, you suck. Okay? AH, you suck. Crap, I don't know who else. Go back to the beginning. Is there anybody else? No, I guess that's it. That's it. All of you suck. Every single one of you sucks. All right? All of you suck. I will see you tomorrow, and I will tell you all how much you suck. All right? Peace out, everybody. Have a good day. You all suck.